The metamorphosis of Mr. McMahon going from a regular corporate boss to the craziest person on the roster was something. Each year he was slowly losing his mind and was looking less and less sane. Stone Cold started it and the rest followed up, leaving him absolutely exposed mentally. A whole video wouldn't do proper justice to what Vince McMahon was doing. You just have to watch the shows, because the list of his actions would fill up an entire book. The feud with Zach Gowen, his issues with his daughter, firing JR, starting a feud with Shawn Michaels because he told him to stop living in the past, and 2007 was his absolute apex. Looking back, it felt like the series finale for the McMahon show, at least as a character, because he can't go any further than he did that year. On the January 29th, 2007 episode of Raw, Mr. McMahon wanted to present a magazine cover. He donned a cowboy hat, mocking the Texas crowd, calling them stupid, and the reason why he was here was because of Fan Appreciation Night. "You suck" chants intensify as McMahon thanks them for making him a billionaire, and in return, he wanted to give the fans a gift. Not everyone though. Just one. They brought in this woman and the gift was a framed magazine cover. All of a sudden, Donald Trump pops up on the screen and he's talking about how the fans don't appreciate McMahon being cheap. And he was so desperate to combat this belief, feeling he actually did a good thing. Unlike him, he wanted to give things of value. Money. And from the heavens descended cash money. Vince tried to downplay it, calling it monopoly money, and upon realizing what's up, finally came to terms that he had been trumped. And the way he was shouting was like a cartoon character. He's like, "How dare Donald Trump embarrass me? You people don't deserve it." And this upset him to the point where he said, quote, "I've never been embarrassed like this in my life." And Coach was glazing hard, saying he added $10 of his own money here to return it to Vince. 2 weeks later, the boss finally invited Trump to Raw. This was in light of a business proposal from the Donald. He made mention of their friendship and introduced him. He felt Trump was intimidated over everything, but these assumptions were proven to be false. Even though McMahon was embarrassed, Trump didn't hesitate to tell him that it's happening again tonight. McMahon had an idea of this money drop and canceled it, but about the business proposal, Trump wanted a match at WrestleMania. No words, none of that. He's like, "Oh, okay." Then he straight up said that he wanted to kick Vince's ass. McMahon declined due to his last injuries but had a counter proposal. He wanted to find a representative. Trump wanted to do something bigger and the boss was worried over losing a lot of money, so Trump wanted to shave his head if he beats McMahon at WrestleMania. So it's hair versus hair. He claimed Vince's hair was fake, made mention of his own hair being fake possibly, and this idea was great. Vince loved it, only to decline. This only caused Trump to insinuate he's a coward, and he accepted. After making a joke out of Trump, he introduced as representative the following week, Umaga. Umaga displayed a high level of aggression and threat for anybody that came in his way. However, Trump had something up his sleeve. He praised Umaga for being an animal, but said that the only way he could tame an animal is if he finds somebody superior. Bobby Lashley. McMahon was certainly caught off guard with this selection, and Lashley showed zero fear. The boss called for security, knowing this thing's gonna go down in a big way, and the security barely kept these men separated. It wasn't until they delivered a lot of shots to each other and after the commercial break that they were separated. Then Lashley dove through a cage the next on ECW onto Umaga. It was one of the craziest stuff. With that said, because of the complicated nature of this match, the board wanted a special referee, and McMahon was fuming. He did want this referee to be in his favor, but wasn't counting on it. With the contract signing ahead, another matter had to be dealt with, the special referee. McMahon had pushed for his son Shane, but was in for something totally different. First of all, Eric Bischoff came out. Vince was worried, but Bischoff calmed him down, saying he isn't the referee. The only reason he came out was to tell him that they're going to enjoy seeing Donald Trump shave his head. Then Mick Foley came out, and once again it was expected of him to confirm he was a referee. He tried to sweet talk him before Foley asked for his job back, and his request was accepted. Then he demanded that his book get promoted, and all of his requests were accepted, and Foley said that it was a deal. And this is when he revealed that he wasn't the referee for WrestleMania. But the jokes concluded because Shane McMahon finally arrived. Father was dancing, but not for long, because Shane revealed they lost. Shane didn't want to tell him the referee, but he was quite insistent, and when he did, the hope that faded and the dread on his face was something. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin, a gloomy sign of what's to come at WrestleMania. Okay, adding Austin to the equation was great. The match already had some mainstream attention because of Trump, but adding Austin as a referee made it even bigger than it already was. Will he screw over Vince? How will he officiate? A bunch of questions coming from this reveal, and the contract signing was going to be cracked up. McMahon started believing Trump left the building in fear, but that was far from the truth. Vince told him that this is the last contract he signs with hair on his head, and Trump disagreed, saying Lashley's gonna beat his guy's ass. The match is official. McMahon made mention of a poll saying 95% of celebrities wanted to see Trump bald. Then Stone Cold interrupted. He asked the crowd about each man, and let's just say that Vince had a lot of heat. He gave Trump the rules of the game when he, Austin, is around. He's like, "Stone Cold, he'll never work for you," and warned him. Of course, Austin didn't forget about McMahon, who was laughing about this whole thing, and he's like, "You got a problem with bald-headed people?" And Lashley had this look of anger on his face. Austin told him somebody's gonna get a haircut. No flat top, no whatever. They're gonna be bald. After Austin left, Trump proceeded to show a picture of McMahon bald. They teased a fight, and it was anything but that. Meanwhile, Bobby Lashley was in great form. He broke the master lock, First time, I should note. And Umaga was selected to make an example out of Eugene, and McMahon even cut his hair after he spilled some coffee on it. Vince was on such a high that he wanted a match with the ECW champion Bobby Lashley. Why? Because Stone Cold, meanwhile, was being bought. He was unhappy with McMahon trying to sway him in his favor, and he even said that this is grounds for disqualification and was ready to go get him. It was revealed to be the coach. Vince did not have anything to do with this. Austin then started talking about what he would do to the wrestlers if they broke the rules, and the coach started talking about how being bald is good. Austin laughs, the laugh dies like an NXT wrestler's push, and boom, stunner. McMahon did end up confronting Austin later, and after a road incident with him, proceeded to beat up his driver. Bro was losing his mind at the worst time. About Bobby Lashley, the deck was stacked against him. He had to deal with Caden Murdoch, Chris Masters, Johnny Nitro, and to top it all off, Umaga came out. All McMahon had to do was go for the pinfall, and even that was botched. Lashley was left with a huge disadvantage because after the match, Umaga continued inflicting damage, leaving the ECW champion's chances slim for WrestleMania. So this was it. A high level of media attention was on this match because regardless of the stipulation, Trump is a big name. He had a lot going on TV at the time, and as a kid, this was the match. This was the most hyped match for WWE. I remember WWE made it an effort to promote the hell out of this match, even more so than John Cena and Shawn Michaels and Batista and The Undertaker. Of course, the match for me was Cena and HBK, but WWE saw it differently and for obvious reasons. The match itself was solid, I'd say. It was hardly the main attraction. Of course. Austin played the role as he said he would, and this got him a Samoan spike. So Shane McMahon ran in and became the special referee after the coast to coast. The ball was in McMahon's court, the cards were perfectly laid out, and all was going well, but then Stone Cold woke up, and at this point, even the ring keeper wanted Vince bald, ringing the bell at 2. It was a mistake, of course. Shane tried to save him from the inevitable, and in some ways, this looked like it worked, because Vince made it to the ramp. Suddenly, Lashley turned into prime Devin Hester or something, and sprinted down the ramp, catching him, and he's like, "Get your ass over here, you got a haircut." Stunner. And there it is, the $1 million picture, the image that would be on newspapers on April 2nd, 2007. When watching this, it really feels like the end of the villainous Mr. McMahon, the super tyrant who did as he pleased. And he was still in some ways, but after this, he lost some of that supreme power he used to throw around. He's the only owner that embarrasses himself for the sake of it. Then Stone Cold almost stunned Trump. It was an attempt, but man, was it so bad. I mean, he did stun him, but the selling was horrible. This match had been done under odd circumstances as well. That's one thing I should mention. Trump had Vince sign a contract where the agreement was his hair couldn't be touched regardless of what happened in the match. Another was for Vince to donate $4 million to a charity. Those were the terms. This was actually revealed a couple of months ago. Okay, so from here on, it was only going to get wilder. The next night on Raw, Mr. McMahon was eager to go out to the ring and talk. The coach was worried over what everyone would think of him, and the wrestlers were on the verge of exploding. The King said that he looked like an old comedian. The boss refused to be humbled, saying he's a bald billionaire, and even went as far as to say that he's changing the record books. He's the winner, and to prove his point that Bobby Lashley can't beat Umaga, he's going to face him for the ECW championship. McMahon said that the fans aren't going to see his head and claimed that the hat was surgically cemented on his head. He even said that the doctor told him that he has more raw testosterone than an all-male prison. Oh man. Seeing him bald is the equivalent of no chance in hell. That's what he said. Bobby Lashley, though, wanted to test that claim. He tried to strike, but Lashley grabbed his hat and he started putting things on his head before going into hiding under skirts. It's crazy. So Lashley stripped her. This is the most 2000 segment. Minus the end of this segment, it felt like some cartoon. McMahon's humiliation was a problem for everybody in sight as well. Armando Estrada was made Umaga's partner despite the looming threat above Estrada. He came up short. Shane McMahon, meanwhile, felt that this was a stain against the McMahon name and confronted Bobby Lashley about this. He told Lashley that he took his family's dignity at WrestleMania, so now he's taking the ECW championship away from him. Umaga came out, but Shane wanted to do things his way and was very hostile and aggressive about it. Lashley wanted this match, wanted to shave his head just like he did to Father. Shane almost seemed worried over the situation, but ended up accepting. This match was revealed to be a setup though, and Don McMahon finally had a smile on his face. He started shouting at Lashley that he did this to him, and his punishment is at Backlash. Tonight may have never been for the title, but at Backlash it will be. He said that it's going to be Umaga, Shane, and himself. Handicap match. McMahon's humiliation at his own creation brought out the fury of hell upon Bobby Lashley. The ECW champion though wasn't interested in paying for his sins as he cost Umaga the Intercontinental Championship in Milan. Shane McMahon and Vince meanwhile had felt motivated to prepare for this match. Shane even challenged the fans and even asked of Jose Mourinho if he wanted to come to the ring. The special one wasn't interested though. Shane McMahon said that he scoured all over for somebody to fight him, and he chose a guy who some of you are familiar with. Robbie Brookside. This turned out to be a one-sided beating, but the McMahons are prepared for this match. They're ready to go all out to take away the title and clean up their image after what had occurred at WrestleMania. As for the match at Backlash, I believe this was the first time McMahon wore the Durag. I don't think Atlanta was ready for such a fashion statement. Durag Vince had some hidden powers behind him because he managed to become champion against Super Bobby Lashley. Lashley of course had to endure Umaga and Shane, but he was very resilient throughout the match. The numbers though overwhelmed him and the boss was the new champion. This was bizarre. ECW didn't back for a year and the champions were RVD, Big Show, and now Vince McMahon. And not only that, but a durag wearing boss. What? The reception this title victory received was mostly negative at the time. Some fans felt that ECW was reduced to a joke by having McMahon as champion. Or, if he was already considered a joke, the final nail in the coffin for the rebrand. When you look at others talking about it now, it's a different story, but then it was seen as disgraceful. The thing is, ECW already died. It died in early 2001, and the rebrand itself died in December of 2006, so it's like beating a dead horse. Let's at least be entertained by it, right? The next night on Raw, he confronted John Cena and started talking like he's on crack. He's shouting, "What up, Holmes? The champ is here." Cena said that he ain't ECW unless it stands for extremely crazy white guy. He even said that if HBK wins the WWE title, he could come after the big one. With Bobby Lashley on the side, Mr. McMahon had to address the complaints of the ECW originals. Rob Van Dam here expressed dissatisfaction and disappointment over McMahon killing ECW. Once he heard about this, he thought, whatever. Let's have Umaga beat the hell out of RVD. He even shared a moment with his son over here. Also, what is this image? But anyways, the ECW originals confronted him and RVD shouted that he made a mockery out of the name. Sandman told him to read between the lines. Tommy Dreamer was told his boots were fly and said that ECW wasn't brought back because of Vince, it was because of the fans. For the champion, talk was cheap and asked if they wanted a fight. Turns out he wanted to face the winner of the Fatal 4-Way Extreme Rules match. RVD ended up winning the match and Bobby Lashley meanwhile was looking for his title shot, but Vince threatened him. Since he couldn't touch him, Vince opted to show a clip of Backlash. The provoking level here was out of this world. Do you want to call me champ? Do you want to beat me up? But a title shot was in the way of all this. He's like, oh, you're not going to get the title shot if you do that. This picture was of course out of date and McMahon said that this is the way it should be. Lashley, he was eager to have the rematch at Judgment Day and the way he promoted it made it seem like it was a one-on-one, but then he added Umaga and Shane. It was very simple for Lashley but tempting to keep his composure. Instead, he attacked the coach. As for RVD, he had to fight like hell and even that wasn't enough to steer clear and recapture the title. Compared to the previous month, Bobby Lashley looked more determined than ever to win back his title and this clearly irritated Prison Vince. Damn, what a tackle. Shane stopped Lashley in his tracks before an attempted attack on his father, and Lashley's pace was on par with Shane's, and just as he's about to get him, he hops in the limo, and Lashley turns around and boom, he gets blasted with a title. I'm telling you guys, that durag gives him powers. He would have never thought of something like this beforehand. But for all these deceitful tactics, Lashley easily overcame the trio at Judgment Day and left Vince absolutely dejected and disappointed with these turn of events. It didn't even take him 5 minutes. Umaga suddenly attacked and McMahon revealed that Lashley didn't become champion. Why? Because he didn't beat him. This is a disgrace. I don't know why they dragged out this feud. Maybe they loved the durag character. It was an average story with Durag Vince carrying like 2007 LeBron and the Cavaliers or something. But that was coming to an end. He stopped wearing the durag. It was regular Vince from here on. The next night on Raw, Bobby Lashley said that to become champion, he has to beat Vince. So he challenged him to a match. It wasn't like the boss was afraid, but he declined. Instead, he was focused on one night stand. He was interested in defending his title in a street fight. His opponent? The Blue Bean. As for Lashley, he has no chance in hell. Shane went on to add a couple of words before Father finally accepted the challenge. However, Bobby Lashley has to beat every one of his opponents in a gauntlet match to receive the title shot at one night stand. He went through everyone including Umaga, but there was only one man left. Shane McMahon. All it took was one clutch moment and he had Father believing his title reign was over. The build for the match was incredibly limited and it meant that they had to rush it. Shane scored a victory over Lashley and Cena in a handicap match and the other two had one final confrontation on ECW. Vince wanted to know why Lashley comes back time and time again and he said that he wants to come back for the championship. And this is where the champion corrected him saying it's him. He claimed that he won't enter Lashley's world. Why? Because he's from the streets. Lashley said Vince doesn't know anything about the streets and that he's born with a silver spoon. The champ said that this is Lashley's last stand. Losing means he's done. Things got more intense as Bobby said that he's stripping him of the title and was told to respect his elders. Vince was like, I'm old enough to be your uncle, to which Lashley responded, my dad's uncle. This Sunday, I'll become ECW champion again. That's what he said. Okay, this match wasn't that important in the long run on paper. However, the effect it had on Mr. McMahon and his storylines was huge. The trio had multiple opportunities to take out the challenger, but despite the odds in their favor, they were overwhelmed. Lashley had endured a mauling for the most part, but moments of brilliance opened up the McMahon family lock and steered Lashley to victory, and he was once again the ECW champion. Unknowingly, he set McMahon's life into one of the most bizarre 8 months I've ever seen in wrestling. To say this loss was demoralizing would be a huge understatement. Lost his title, lost his mind. He just randomly popped up the next night talking crazy to John Cena. You trying to embarrass me or trying to humiliate me for not being world champion? He repeated his name twice over 2 minutes, and John Cena told him the only thing keeping Vince alive is his patience. He randomly shouted Cena was a liar for claiming he lost his mind, and since he lost his title, Cena's gonna lose his when he defends the gold tonight. He then followed up with Santino, the Hardy Boys, and to top it all off, it got to the point where Vince started believing a black cloud is on the horizon, and he couldn't get rid of it. Hell, even said that next week he's gonna feel better. Why? Because it's the draft and Mr. McMahon appreciation night. The next night on ECW, he sat on a rocking chair during Lashley's match. It was flat out odd, and the commentary made mention this. Later that week on SmackDown, Edge invited him as a guest on the Cutting Edge, and when he brought him out, he quoted a Psalms verse saying, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art evil." And his body language is all over the place, and Edge told him that the future is bright. The way he was sitting, it was like he had a stick in his ass or something. Edge tried to draw inspiration in him and motivate him to look past one night stand, but it wasn't working. Hell, Edge even called him a world champion. He handed it to him like it's a retirement ceremony or something, and this is when he told Edge that he's a sycophant. Bro was cracked up beyond belief, saying, "Vengeance is mine," and booked him in a title match against Batista. Edge is like, "It's not fair," and Vince responded saying, "Life is not fair. Life sucks, and then you die." But then he added, "Do or die." So basically what he's trying to say is that if Edge wins, he wins. Batista's done. He can't challenge for the title. This was the most strange segment in a minute. He was out of his mind. He was lost. Nobody knew what was up. Later that night, he looked all good, but then Ashley bumped into him and the coffee spilled. No problem for all of 2 minutes because he suspended her, claiming she meant to do it. But this was only the beginning. On Raw Appreciation Night, he gave a bunch of wrestlers the chance to talk about what they truly think of Vince McMahon. They did not seem fond of him. And when it came down to it at the end of the night, he just said thank you and walked out. He goes to the back. The lower and the mid-carders are lined up. Paul London is smiling because Vince goes the wrong way. And when he exits to his limo, breathes a sigh of relief. He hesitates to enter his limo, but when he does, it explodes. This was crazy. WWE wanted to do a big storyline. This storyline easily stands out as a big one. It was crazy. I used to watch Raw every week, and this was wild. Easily stands out. If you have any semblance of memory from this time period, then for sure you remember this. It's too memorable to forget. Mr. McMahon, the owner of WWE, the man that casted terror on half of the roster, ceased to exist. This was in modern times almost unprecedented, at least in WWE, because Lucha Underground and Impact enjoy killing characters. The story had an eerie presence about it because McMahon seemed peaceful in his future, and it also meant that WWE was going to have a big summer storyline. And this formula carried on over the next couple of years. Mr. McMahon's death shook the core of WWE, and while it was a time of mourning in light of tragedy, it was also a time for investigation. What I liked about this storyline is how fresh it was. It could have sucked or whatever, but no doubt was it entertaining. You had a 10-bell salute in honor of McMahon, held some tribute matches, and even had a bunch of wrestlers discuss their experience with their former boss. Ironically, the Vengeance Night of Champions theme song was gone by Fuel. This would become weirder a week later as well. Stephanie McMahon addressed her father's death on Raw and announced a tribute show for Raw the following week. She was emotional as expected, but also mentioned that her family was seeking vengeance for the perpetrator of the limousine explosion. Edge was looking for suspects and accused Tori Wilson of this heinous act. Why? Because she's so far out of the left field that it's the ones you least expect. The lead investigator was making progress and revealed that a well-known personality was at the crime scene. This confused the commentary, and at the time it was hyped up. WWE ran a commercial for the show and everything looked set. Memorial service. Every wrestler from all 3 brands was to attend. John Cena, Edge, CM Punk, Elijah Burke, all of them. And that day was set to be historic. But the memory we all have of that day was a tribute show to somebody else. Chris Benoit. The actions of Chris Benoit and the tragedy of Daniel and Nancy put a huge black mark, and rightfully so, on the storyline. You can't really swerve from a storyline like this for 2 minutes and then be like, yeah, about Vince, he's dead, yada yada. And it's not because of the act of wrestling being exposed. Because if you were a kid like me, you saw some WWE's fake video with Fake It by Seether playing in the background or something. If you were over the age of 10, 99% you knew what wrestling was all about. But it was about the respect to Daniel and Nancy. They couldn't really go back to the storyline. Vince McMahon came out on the June 25th, 2007 episode of Raw and publicly spoke about Chris Benoit's death. He's standing in the ring, out of character, not talking nonsense, and not to mention the story already had some controversy behind it due to the multiple deaths of wrestlers over the past few months. In addition, some people actually believe he died. even Trump. It was for a single moment, of course, and searches of Vince McMahon skyrocketed in the weeks of the limo explosion. Another thing to mention is that sensational Sherry passed away on June 15th, and the storyline had just begun. Since there was so much media attention over the Benoit tragedy and simply being downright wrong at the time, the storyline was dropped. The circumstances that this storyline was brought under were odd as well. According to the report here, the idea was first presented in February of 2005. It called for Carlito, who was using his underworld connections, to make Theodore Long's life miserable, to have a bomb planted in Long's car, similar to Monday's Raw angle with McMahon. Long was to walk to the car, open the door, and presumably die in the explosion. WWE writer Tom Sheehock supported the Dave Lagana penned idea, but Brian Gewirtz dismissed the idea as being too far-fetched. Stephanie McMahon agreed with Gewirtz that the proposal never even reached Vince McMahon's desk. Interestingly, under pressure from Bonnie Hammer to increase WWE Raw ratings, a version of the angle took place in 2007 on the show, for which Gewirtz serves as lead writer. The hell? Carlito's gonna do all this? Damn. The reported plan for the storyline is all over the place. It's because the reporters don't have a clear idea, because Vince changes plans all the time, and around here, the dirt sheets were correct a little too often. But the famous story goes, the original idea was to be along the lines of the famous Dallas soap opera storyline of Who Shot JR. Vince's entire family was going to return to TV in full force, including his real-life brother Rod McMahon and his family. Rod lives, or at least did at the time, in North Carolina and has pretty much zero contact with Vince. The company had actually contacted him and he agreed to go show up for Vince's funeral, but of course that never took place. No contact was ever made with Rod again. I can't remember who it was, but at one point someone on one of our radio shows years back, when we used to have the former WWE writers on during WrestleMania weekend, mentioned that Vince, while gone in storyline, would be amassing a hobo army to try to reclaim his throne upon returning. That was never the case, although there were preliminary discussions about how when Vince was gone, he'd grow out his hair and beard and fingernails and basically play a Howard Hughes-style recluse character. Those ideas never got very far, and in the end, there was going to be a full investigation into who killed Vince, and it would be revealed that Mr. Kennedy, the now Mr. Anderson in Aces and 8 and TNA, would reveal himself to be the illegitimate son of Vince. Long-term idea, and keep in mind at this point, there was really no such thing as long-term ideas because Vince still changed his mind on a dime, was that there would be a number of swerves leading to a will being discovered. It would lead to a big reveal on Raw that Vince left the company to Kennedy, and the storyline would either be that Kennedy got the company, or there would be a battle between Kennedy and Stephanie or Shane, where whoever was the most ruthless would end up with it. This is going to play out all the way to WrestleMania 24, where Vince would make his triumphant return, side with Kennedy, and presumably it would go on from there. Damn. It was long term, so the plans might have changed, but they were aiming high. WWE hadn't had a big storyline like this in years, and with the TV drama aspect to it, I'm sure it would have been a rating success. But since they had to pivot to a different storyline, it meant a lot would be different. Figure 4 Wrestling in August of 2007 revealed the McMahon paternity angle will lead to a WrestleMania 24 match between Mr. Kennedy and Triple H. The plan is to slowly drop hints towards who the illegitimate son is and reveal on a 3-hour Raw special in October that is Mr. Kennedy. Triple H will announce that he's Vince's son-in-law, which is how the match between him and Kennedy will develop. Stephanie McMahon will make her return this fall to get involved in the angle. Shane McMahon is going to get involved around the Royal Rumble. USA Network executive Bonnie Hammer is the one behind the 3-hour Raw special and is very satisfied with the angle. WWE has a backup plan in case the storyline is not successful with the fans. Mr. Kennedy would reveal that he faked the lab results in order to inherit McMahon's money. Whoa. Again, I have to mention this. This stuff is mostly true because there was this former WWE writer that used to leak information, and he was fired in May of 2008. But as I said, this was a big story. It would have done wonders for Mr. Kennedy's career because they couldn't really back off after this point, right? On the August 6, 2007 episode of Raw, Mr. McMahon finally made his return and immediately called for the wrestlers to be in attendance for his return promo. He casually came out like he was expected to be around, and McMahon addressed the last time he appeared on Raw in the limo explosion incident. He said that that's the way he wanted to go out. Why? Because he wanted to know if people really cared. It was simply that. Staging his demise was all about seeing others as true character. He then booked a battle royal with the winner becoming the new general manager of Raw. But that wasn't the big story of the day. Later that night, the boss received a phone call from his accountant. It was clear that something big was looming ahead for him. The IRS were investigating him, and he started going off on the news, being just for entertainment, and held a strong disdain towards the IRS, not him. It was looking like some sort of corrupt dealing storyline or something like that, and then Coach received a summons on behalf of McMahon, and when inspecting the documents, it was big. Meanwhile, McMahon was having deja vu, and it turns out he had another kid, and a paternity suit was filed against him. The name of the child was withheld from him, and this left him incensed. His belief was that this was extortion. Why would he be intimidated if he's not scared of the government and the media? Who's your daddy chant intensifies. He shouted nothing bothers him and even went as far as to say that he didn't care what the fans think. All of a sudden, Stephanie McMahon came out. He accused her of having something to do with this information for money, and she revealed that her half-brother or sister was standing around this ring. I'm probably delusional, but I'm pretty sure I heard a Kennedy chant, just a little. They all started pointing at each other. I mean, it's obviously Chuck Palumbo. And the teases, they were something. And the search for the kid was a tough task. Vince listed a million stories, and at one point, he overspoke next to his wife. But with the search on, it brought some odd faces. McMahon held resentment over his daughter revealing such information, and the coach believed he's going to accurately predict the correct wrestler. He mentioned a black woman in the 70s, Kansas City. To top it all off, the coach was adopted. And upon hearing this, McMahon was ready to jump out of a window. The coach was so desperate to reveal this wrestler so soon despite the obstacles ahead. Initially, it was Eugene, but then Vince debunked the Kentucky story, saying he didn't do it with his cousin. And Eugene claimed this story is the reason why Eric Bischoff became a big figure at WCW and wanted to take him out of business. Who's next? Long lost daughter, Melina. He aggressively denied it because he already did some business with her. And Melina's like, better hope I'm not your daughter because I'm going to sue you for every cent. He called her a bitch. And the last one, he was eager to get it over with. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin. His reaction says it all. McMahon said that there's no chance in hell. Austin talked about how Vince always has his grapefruits busy and kicked them before continuing with the low blow. Austin hits the stunner on the coach and the search continues. Things were looking up though. Mr. Kennedy was looking more and more likely. For one, he had Vince's middle name, and in addition, in his eyes, Kennedy walked funny. I mean, doesn't he walk funny as well? At the same time, Triple H was back and casting a terror on the boss. He claimed he found a bunch of ladies that may have had some relations with McMahon, and even Carlito's sister was brought, and he was dejected. He tricked them into saying he likes chicken cocks. He's like, you hate animals. No, I love animals. I love cats. You hate roosters. Oh, I love roosters. You hate cocks. Oh, I love cocks. And this was the start of the feud. McMahon was very confident about his kid being revealed meanwhile, because the woman doesn't have any patience in his eyes. He believed that this was going to end real soon. But in front of this big reveal was the family. They brought their attorneys and were ready to go to war. Linda told him that she doesn't want his money, and he began shouting about how he was lonely on the road and that he worked his hands to the bone to build this empire. Stephanie came out and he called her a hellcat and added that she's the volatile one. He wanted to show a clip of the good times with his daughter, but then Triple H showed a totally different one. She said that if Vince is unfit, then he should step down as chairman, and to top it all off, Shane McMahon was here. He wasn't as aggressive as the other two in his approach, but held a lot of resentment over father's recent actions. The death-faking incident, walking around all proud. Shane told him that if he wants to change, it's up to him. Because it's all about the family legacy, and messing around with it is not the best scenario. They all believed he could change. Shane even said that he always wanted a brother. Vince vowed to be a better human and promised everything, but then Mr. Kennedy interrupted. The coach was caught off guard with his presence, and this is when Kennedy spoke about how these similarities with Vince weren't a coincidence. The biggest was that the reveal was happening in Green Bay, Wisconsin. For context, Kennedy's from there. He straight up called him dad and said that he's his son. He basically tried to undo all this progress Vince made in the last 2 minutes, saying he accepts all of them. He's like, oh, you don't have to change for anybody. I like you the way you are. The best part was when he shouted his name and added McMahon. But then Barack Obama from Ohio came out and he revealed that the DNA test is indeed a WWE wrestler. However, the son wasn't Mr. Kennedy. So who was it? Well, the client wanted to drag this until Raw. In the meantime, they were throwing out riddles. Things Were Looking Up was one of them. Great Khali came to mind, but it clearly wasn't him. When it came down to it, things were interesting. Mr. Kennedy wasn't on display for this one, and what's funny is that nothing was in the way, except for his own mistake with the whole wellness policy thing. It is what it is, you know, it's a shame for him because, as I said, this was going to be a big story, and he was doing very well at the time. He's going to have a big match at WrestleMania. It is what it is. Obama once again dragged it out. He's like, the son is not extreme. The Sandman missed the memo. He's like, oh, the son has a fondness for gold. The son's skin is fair. Shelton and Henry were so damn disappointed over this one. He's like, the son's hair is fair as well. I love how they lose the smiles on their faces. They think they're about to become rich or something. They're about to inherit a lot of money from father. But then he's like, you are not the son. Kennedy chant intensifies and McMahon says that he's suspended for impersonating a McMahon. What's next? Individual. So that means Kane and Murdoch are out. And the best of all, the son loves to play the game. So, him and Stephanie, was that? It's the storyline Vince wanted. The look of anger and disappointment on Triple H's face was out of this world. None of them believed this. Obama said that the son plays a bunch of games and these games clearly didn't relate to Triple H. It was Hornswoggle and Vince ceased to exist. one of the most bizarre reveals of this era of WWE. Hornswoggle, aka Little Bastard. At this point, what do you do with a storyline that was starting serious? You know, this had a serious beginning. It was very big. What are you going to do with it? The plans WWE had for Mr. Kennedy were ridiculous. To be the son of Vince McMahon, it couldn't have been underwhelming for him, even if he wanted it to be. Because a storyline like this will bring all the attention on you, and in turn will have most of the screen time. So by changing it to a comedy story, it avoids the commitment to a certain wrestler, because there isn't many on the roster that could be Vince McMahon's son. The only one I could see is JBL, and even then, I don't think it would have been as good as Mr. Kennedy. He was the perfect choice at the time. Imagine someone like Edge or MVP. Obviously, MVP is a much better choice than Edge, and for a comedy storyline, Hornswoggle was right. Maybe Sandman would have been funny, trying to wear a tailored suit worth a couple of thousand, decides to drink beer and disgrace it. Mr. Kennedy, though, finally explained the process of the original reveal in an interview with the 10 Count podcast. And I quote, "I was told that it was going to be me, and we built TV that way for several weeks, and then I got in trouble. So I messed up, and then I got suspended for a month, I think. Yeah, I was suspended for 30 days, I want to say. $10,000 fine, and that kind of threw everything off because, like, literally, the week that they were supposed to reveal that it was me in Green Bay, Wisconsin, of all places, and then that happened. So then that really threw a wrench into everything, and they said, alright, we're going this way. Yeah, Hornswoggle was the son. Being a compassionate father, Vince wanted to put his son Hornswoggle up for adoption. Before this, he told Hornswoggle that he's eventually going to come across a bunch of money. But he wanted Hornswoggle to know that life isn't just about money. Then he said adoption, and Hornswoggle's smile faded. And there were his new parents. Hornswoggle refused to accept this, and McMahon was forcing this to be a thing. Unfortunately for him, they didn't want anything to do with Hornswoggle after he misbehaved, and they ran away like they were dealing with Bobby Lashley or something. It dawned upon McMahon that pushing Hornswoggle away was going to be tough. He told him that he should stay away and that he's not in the family. He even called him a disgrace and expressed regret over having him as a son. Then Triple H came out. He made a joke out of his father-in-law and said that he has a small penis. So Vince booked him in a handicap match against Cade and Murdoch. This wasn't a problem for Triple H, and despite the shortcomings, it was a nice night for McMahon. He got rid of Hornswoggle. Little did he know, though, this chaos would make its way to Teddy Long and Crystal's wedding, and this thing was funny. They were hopping around the place. The Godfather and the host took everyone to the back with them. It was crazy. It was a stressful time for Vince. He hated Hornswoggle, didn't want to take care of him, and on the other side, he had to deal with Triple H. Dealing with Triple H was much easier, though. He booked him in a handicap steel cage match against Carlito and himself, and he called out Hornswoggle and said that he didn't mean all those things. It was just a test to see if he wanted money. All is well now. Then he asked if he'd like to meet a woman, Melina. Why? Because in his eyes, Hornswoggle being a McMahon means great power and great money. She said that he's cute. She even called him horny. I mean, at this point, Horny was interested. She clearly showed her true colors here. She was talking bad about him. As for Vince, he managed to escape the cage, leaving the game fuming. Hornswoggle, meanwhile, was down horrendous. He was down 6 feet under, and he's having fun while Vince was preparing to make a run for it after the cage match. Just as he's opening the door, there's the game. He challenges him to a match and questions his manhood to get him to accept. As expected, the match was full of drama. Carlito was the referee, Umaga interfered, and every man, despite what happened, lived to fight another day. Triple H was still in tough situations for McMahon, but the main story was Hornswoggle. WWE was, I guess, testing out PG stuff at this point. Vince was expecting Hornswoggle to be taken care of, completely unaware of the terror he was causing Regal and the coach, some Tom and Jerry-esque stuff, and it got to the point where the coach wanted a match with Hornswoggle. He knew Vince was out of the country, and capitalizing on this moment was essential. He told Regal that Hornswoggle wanted to inherit money, so Coach made a match between Umaga and Hornswoggle. Not much came out of it because Triple H made the save. Coach's suspicions about McMahon disliking Hornswoggle were proven true. He was teaching him to have a strong mentality and to hate, so he was going to have him wrestle the coach. Mick Foley was revealed to be the special referee, and the coach did the most, only to come up short. Vince was checking up on Hornswoggle's form often to test him, and his next test was the Great Khali. Regal and Coach trained him in front of the NWA fans, and the coach refused to go through. But after Regal verbally eviscerated him, he followed up. And the coach was forced to be a dummy, and Hornswoggle won with ease. McMahon was using this Khali match as a way to see if his own son get destroyed, but it was hidden deep within the message of showing strength. The McMahons motivated him enough, but when the bell rang, that was a different story. The fans didn't really care. They wanted to heat Shaquille O'Neal. They teased it, but it didn't happen. Honestly, if they could have, it would have been better than what happened. Well, it is what it is. McMahon shouted he didn't give a damn what they want, and the match was extremely one-sided, and the only time Hornswoggle was on offense was winning win after Ranjin Singh. Hornswoggle had to be saved by Finlay, and the effects of Finlay's actions were long-term damaging. The next night, same thing. He saved Hornswoggle and helped him beat Carlito, so Vince wanted to put his luck of the Irish to the test and made a match between Finlay and the Great Khali. He lured Hornswoggle elsewhere, and it turned into the goofiest segment in years. About Finlay, he came out of that match with Armageddon scathed, but managed to score the win. Hornswoggle was developing a winning streak as well, and whatever Vince threw at him, he overcomes it. So this time, he brought in William Regal. The boss was front and center and even told Regal to use the brass knucks, but Regal didn't have that hate in his heart. He revealed that it was a test and he failed. It was about testing if Regal was still the same cold, heartless man he was. Hornswoggle, meanwhile, had to qualify for the Royal Rumble. He had to find a tag team partner though. Finlay wasn't available, so he chose Mick Foley. They won it and were officially in the match. McMahon was constantly throwing something in Hornswoggle's way and Finlay had enough. McMahon denied responsibility about bringing Khali out there and Finlay trying to talk about some deal between them. They did not elaborate further on this deal afterwards. It was just a small thing. After Hornswoggle's Royal Rumble performance where he relied on Finlay to save him, he made his father disappointed. Vince claimed it was to set an example for his son. It was all about discipline and he shouted that the parents should make their kids kiss their ass. So he called out Hornswoggle and pulled his pants down. Finlay finally interrupted and again he's shouting about discipline. Hornswoggle bit his ass instead. As a result of this, he had to go one-on-one with his father. This was not one of the most emotional matches of 2008. Vince ordered Finlay not to come out, yet he disobeyed his orders, and just as he's about to fire him, he backs off. Vince used this as a way to tell Hornswoggle that Finlay's a coward and took a shillelagh shot. The match was still on though, and Hornswoggle hit the tadpole splash to win the match. Vince refused to let this slide and was preparing some dismissal papers, but he ended up changing his mind and said that he's getting his son in the ring inside a steel cage. This match had a surprise too. JBL. He attacked Finlay and handcuffed him, allowing Vince to whoop his son, and even JBL got some shots at him. Finlay was going crazy and Vince felt that he had done enough. He expressed regret over the situation and said that Hornswoggle didn't deserve the beating from JBL, so he called for him to come out and apologize. He threatened to beat him up and said that JBL was simply there to watch Finlay, not beat up his son. JBL almost refused to apologize, but he went through with this saying he's sorry he didn't do it sooner. He claimed to find information that Hornswoggle isn't the son, he's Finlay's son. This conspiracy comes from Vince's family and Finlay knew about this. JBL promised to show proof and promised to make Finlay admit it. They were set for a confrontation the following week and Vince asked Finlay if he conspired with his family. He admitted it was true and also said that Vince wasn't good enough to be Hornswoggle's father. Finlay admitted that he was Hornswoggle's father and JBL was via satellite. He said that he was with Finlay's son and Finlay wanted to fight with Bradshaw, but JBL wanted the match until WrestleMania. He then gave Hornswoggle a beating in the dark. The hell? So that concludes the illegitimate son storyline. The thing is, it was a drag. There was too many goofy moments, TVG stuff. 1 minute Triple H is bleeding and the next Hornswoggle's going through walls. It was unnecessary. Hornswoggle though, it was the biggest thing in his career and he looks back on it finally. And while most of us don't look at it that way, it's understandable why. So where did Vince go from here? He wanted to retire Ric Flair. The same man that started the rule was going to have the chance to end it. The Street Fight rules greatly benefited McMahon, but even then, Shawn Michaels refused to let it end here. He cost Vince the match and Flair took advantage. Vince stopped appearing in storylines from here on and he was always around, but he wasn't doing much. On the May 26, 2008 episode of Raw, Mr. McMahon promised to show the fans appreciation. He said that this idea had never been done on TV before and he wanted to return the favor to the fans and said that it was all about the money. He wanted to give away money and said that he should give away $1 million. And this is where the idea of the $1 Million Mania came from. This thing was for ratings, of course. I remember you couldn't go 10 minutes without thinking about this contest. You had to watch Raw and find a code if I remember correctly. It was $1 million per episode too. At one point he gave a fan $2. A guy chose to rickroll him twice over $200K. I mean, he has his priorities straight, right? McMahon was struggling to get the phone working. The next thing you know, you're here. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Then came draft night. Vince gave away a lot of money. He was set to give away $500K at the end of the night, and he follows up when half of the set starts collapsing. It was one of the most bizarre things to happen in WWE. The set falls and traps him, the wrestlers try to save him, and he has to be stretchered out of there, leading to the McMahons taking over, and Mike Adamle becoming the GM. Damn. So that's the McMahon storyline. Upon his return, he got punted by Randy Orton. He feuds with Orton and Legacy, and then has the Bret Hart thing. And that's the end. The Bret Hart thing's a story for another day, but man, this was a crazy one. McMahon was all over the place here. He was feuding with Trump. He was wearing a do-rag. He had an illegitimate son. He faked his death. He whooped his son's ass. He had a lot going on. It was crazy. The best part of this run was probably do-rag McMahon. Other than that, it was just regular McMahon. He's always a great character, you know. Like, at the end of the day, outside the ring, it's a different story, but inside, McMahon is literally one of the best characters of the 2000s, one of the best wrestling characters of all time. And here, he was always entertaining, you know. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, this storyline sucks, it's boring. It probably does suck, but it's not boring. That's one thing for sure. He was always doing something. It was crazy. So, yeah.
This feud, memorable. It's one of those things I really remember as a kid. Obviously, I have memories of everything else, but if you told me to give you the best story of 2007, the first thing on my mind, it would be this feud. Every Friday night, I'd tune into SmackDown, and I was always there before the show started. At times, I'd wait about an hour or almost 2 hours just to be there on time to watch the opening segment. I love everything about this era of SmackDown. Mr. Kennedy being annoying, MVP flaunting about how he's better than everyone, Paul London and Brian Kendrick doing some unique stuff, Kane causing chaos, Edge doing some heinous stuff. It was awesome. So basically what I'm trying to say right now is that I'm a SmackDown kid. And despite 2007 being quite possibly the darkest year in WWE history, Batista and Taker's story was arguably the brightest spot of the year. Right now, let's get into it. Okay. In January of 2007, Batista was world champion while The Undertaker was starting to hit his stride. Those angle matches really showed us what Taker was capable of in the ring. His physique was probably at its peak around this time period, and I don't think there was a point in his career that he was better all around other than 2007. As for how this feud began, first of all, they were teasing this match before the Royal Rumble. The Undertaker had accidentally booted Batista on the final SmackDown for the Rumble. He was intending to hit Kennedy, but the loudmouth ducked. Batista obviously took this to heart. At the Royal Rumble, The Undertaker finally won the namesake match. He bested the hometown hero Shawn Michaels in order to punch his ticket to WrestleMania 23. He was in the company for 16 years up to this point, and he finally achieved this goal. Over the next week, The Undertaker sent a message to both the WWE and ECW champions. A little side note, imagine Taker going for the ECW championship. Seriously though, if there was a time to do Cena and Taker, WrestleMania 23 was probably the best time. As for Batista though, he was impatient. He straight up entered the ring on that week's SmackDown and just called out The Undertaker. Just as The Undertaker came out, well, he didn't come out. It was John Cena instead. John Cena also wanted to know the decision, and just like Batista, he wanted to prepare very early on for the most important match of his life. Suddenly, The Undertaker finally appeared, and he stared at both champions, and when things couldn't get any crazier, freaking Shawn Michaels appeared. Oh yeah, I remember this episode. The fact that H2K and John Cena appeared on SmackDown at the same time, it blew my mind at the time. Shawn Michaels was here to get an answer from The Undertaker. He was desperate to get that Cena match at WrestleMania, and then Vince came out and he booked John Cena and Shawn Michaels in a match against Batista and The Undertaker at No Way Out. By the way, the last time Vince appeared in the ring on SmackDown, I don't even remember, probably 2004? I don't remember a single segment involving Vince from 2005 or even 6. Maybe he appeared backstage, and I do remember him appearing in a backstage segment, but I can't remember a single moment he was in the ring on SmackDown during this time period. On that week's Raw, The Undertaker finally made his decision regarding WrestleMania. Just as he was about to choose John Cena, he chose Batista. He signaled his intentions and decided to chokeslam the champion. As for Batista, he refused to let that one slide. He did, however, keep his ego in check for the No Way Out match. As for that match, it's not an all-time great, but for some reason, it's one of my favorite matches of the 2000s. Maybe it's because of the star power, and yes, I've seen matches that were way better than this one during the decade, but I'll take this one over many of them. Was it because of the Staples Center crowd? Was it the contrasting styles? Was it because of JBL's commentary? I don't know. One thing that's for certain is that this was fun. I recommend you watch it. It's not a classic by all means, but you'll probably enjoy it if you watch it. Anyways, near the end, Taker and Batista had all the momentum. And just as Taker was going to wrap it up, Batista turned on him by hitting the Spine Buster. This left The Undertaker to a Shawn Michaels sweet chin music and a John Cena FU, costing himself and his WrestleMania opponent the match. So payback is a bit. On the February 23rd, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Batista explained why he turned on The Undertaker at No Way Out. His reasoning, well, first of all, he has a lot of respect for The Undertaker, but he cannot apologize for what he did, and if it gets ugly, then so be it. And sure, he does respect The Undertaker, but he doesn't intimidate him. As a matter of fact, if he was intimidated by The Undertaker, then that's conduct unbecoming of the world champion. That's what he said. He said that he plans on walking into WrestleMania as champion and walking out as champion. So at this point, WWE had Batista be babyface number 2, I guess, because he was getting some boost from the crowd. He wasn't a heel or anything like that. He was just a face, a babyface with an edge. Unlike The Undertaker, we all know how he is. The following week, The Undertaker responded, but just before that happened, Batista reiterated what he said the previous week. Sure, it's an honor to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania. He knows that it's going to get ugly and it's going to be the match of his career. But he's got to stress this. He respects The Undertaker, the utmost respect he has for him, but he refuses to be intimidated. Then we hear a gong and the lights go out. All of a sudden we see The Undertaker paying a visit to the graveyard. He was digging a grave, perhaps Batista's, and he let him know that WrestleMania will be hell for him and he will rest in peace. Batista, though, he showed no fear. Heading into WrestleMania, the Animal Batista was very confident that he's ending the streak. Taker, he showed no weakness either. He had so much momentum heading into the event, and basically those two were heading into a collision course. On the final SmackDown before WrestleMania, and this was after Taker turned on Batista during that Raw tag match earlier that week, both men stood in the same ring at the same moment. This moment, it was like a ticking time bomb. You knew they were going to fight, and this was going to escalate quickly. Teddy Long demanded that they don't physically provoke each other, and Batista said that after the mind games Taker's played on him over the last couple of weeks, he lost respect for the dead man. He gave us an emphatic no. The Undertaker, or in Teddy's words, Mr. Undertaker, responded with silence. Teddy asked Batista what's it gonna take to beat the dead man, and the champion simply responded, 48 hours. He promised to whoop the dead man's ass, and then the challenger for the title took off his jacket and they brawled. The $2 security tried to separate them, but they failed miserably. Now, I assume if you weren't sold on the match, now you were. Like, this was an all-out brawl between two men, and what can I say? I got you hyped for the main event of WrestleMania. In the end, though, Batista managed to hit a devastating spine buster. Taker sat up afterwards, and man, was it electric. Batista was shouting 48 hours while Taker preferred to speak with his actions. As for the WrestleMania 23 match, hot damn, what can I say? One of the best big man matches. They had a chip on their shoulders knowing that they had to prove everyone else wrong, and I'd say this match was when Batista hit his stride as an in-ring performer. Before this match, he was struggling to regain form, but after this match, he managed to click in the ring and he was even better than he previously was. This match had a bunch of moments, and you can go check out this video for the match analysis. They just went out there and it was a ridiculously amazing match. It seemed like Batista had Taker scouted, they went back and forth, they hit their signature moves, they kicked out of those moves, and in the end, it was the Undertaker who was victorious. It was incredibly dramatic. I cannot stress it enough that it was definitely a classic. Was it my favorite match of the night? Shockingly, no. But the match really stole the show. Like, they definitely deserved to main event, but there were other plans on this night. I guess they didn't want it to end like WrestleMania 13. I don't even know. Okay, so now the dead man was 15-0, and he was finally the new World Heavyweight Champion. Overall, a very memorable match, and it was explosive, it was intense, it was dramatic, it was epic. Simply put, it was epic, and if they went another 5 to 10 minutes, it might have been one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. Still is, though. Amazing storytelling, incredible action, and you get a classic match. I said it beforehand, I'll say it again. On the April 6, 2007 episode of SmackDown, The Undertaker came out to chat about his match or compete with King Booker, I'm not sure which one, when Batista interrupted. The animal walked in exasperated fashion. He was really pissed off that he lost the title. He simply entered the ring, and he said these words: "Congratulations, I would like my rematch now." He said something along the lines of that. That's all. That's what he said. He said those couple of words, and he walked out of there. Then King Booker from out of nowhere struck. This would come back to bite him as Taker tombstoned him on top of the announce table. R.I.P. King Booker. Seriously though, I believe he had issues with his wife during that night, and he wanted to like make an impact in order to get back. I don't even know. Maybe he's becoming irrelevant on Smack. I don't even know. Like I said, Batista didn't come out to complain, wow, my baby. Nope, he just simply asked for the rematch and left. Over the next couple of weeks, both men teamed up with one another. As for the Backlash match, it was last man standing, and once again, I cannot stress it enough, these guys could do no wrong on pay-per-view. Story of the match, these guys could barely keep each other down for the 3 count at WrestleMania. Now they have to keep each other down for the 10 count. The match itself was tremendous. The animal had issues with his right leg. It felt like a war. They went back and forth. Batista hits a spear. He hits 2, no 3 spine busters, but Taker was resilient. The dead man responded with a choke slam, and man, it wasn't even the match of the night in my opinion. Yet, if it happened any other night, it would definitely be. The bad leg was hindering Batista's performance, but it didn't hurt him in the long run. He speared The Undertaker right off the stage, and it was a mess, in a good way. The ref counted to 10, and I know everyone hates these kinds of endings, and rightfully so, but this feud was going to continue, so was this the only choice? I mean, it seriously made Batista look on par with The Undertaker, so that's a good thing. Overall, another enjoyable match, and you're better off just watching their whole collection of matches on the network. Seeing as Teddy Long made the 3rd match official for next week, Batista came out to speak about the steel cage match on that week's SmackDown. He was getting some boost from the crowd who clearly favored The Undertaker. He said that at Backlash, he and The Undertaker pushed themselves to the limit. Neither one of them was able to answer the 10 count though, and due to the result, nothing was resolved. He said that when he was under that rubble, he asked himself, like, was the title worth it? Batista's answer, well, this is what he said. He said that if he could have, he would have stepped out of his body and slapped himself for thinking of such a stupid question. He was ready to do this again despite his body hurting because it was worth it in his eyes. He claimed that he's regaining the title and he left. The Undertaker responded later that night stating that he took Batista's right to the world title, and he let him know that next week he will show no remorse, no mercy, and when it's all said and done, Batista will rest in peace. On SmackDown, The Undertaker suffered a little setback. Initially, the WWE wanted to give him a long run since he hadn't held a world title in nearly 5 years. Just to note, these are dirt sheet reports. You might hear about him throughout the video. Some of them are true, some of them might not be, although I believe nearly every single one of them is true. So Taker was going to hold the title for a long time. but he tore a tendon in his bicep and was going to be out for months. Funny enough, the feud between himself and Batista was going to conclude inside Hell in a Cell at Judgment Day. So who was going to step up to that challenge? Well, according to Dave Meltzer and a couple of other guys in May of 2007, there was a bunch of stars considered for following The Undertaker. Some of them were unexpected to me, Finlay. The reason why he wasn't champion was because he was in the veteran role. They thought he was too old or something like that. MVP, it was too early. Mark Henry, he was injury prone, and he might not be able to deliver on pay-per-view, because the world champion has to have great matches and whatever. Randy Orton was another one considered, but since he smashed and destroyed a hotel room, that idea was shot down. Mr. Kennedy, the week before, was seen as the best choice for obvious reasons. Edge was strongly considered, and we all know what happened. And the weirdest of them all, not necessarily because of the scenario, but because of the person themselves, Chris Benoit. Why wasn't he made champion? Well, the reports, they say that the head writer, Michael Hayes at the time, thought he couldn't cut a good promo. Due to that, it was widely believed that Chris's main event days were all but over. The choices were narrowed down to Kennedy, Edge, and Orton. We all know who they initially chose, but he suffered an injury. As for how it went down on TV, here we go. On the May 7, 2007 episode of Raw, Mr. Kennedy was claiming once again that he's cashing in at WrestleMania 24 in Orlando. Hell, the guy even had a graphic showing the number of days left till he officially cashes in. That's how into it he was, and he was actually going to cash in, but not at WrestleMania 24. Backstage, Edge for some reason was in a mood, and this was because of the lack of main event opportunities. He's wanting, Shawn Michaels gets a title match or whatever, and he reminded Kennedy that he treated the briefcase like a world title. Obviously, the briefcase holder didn't really want to accept the challenge, but he eventually did. And that scream, oh man.
Mr. Kennedy! Kennedy!
As for how that match went, Edge was the smartest bastard in the arena. He didn't wait for the bell to ring. He got his licks in before the match even began. By the time Kennedy entered the ring, he was damaged goods. Despite the referee's warnings, Mr. Kennedy wanted to go through with it, and that ended up being the stupidest decision because Edge speared the main event push out of him to become Mr. Money in the Bank. The Rated R superstar got another shot in, and JR was proclaiming him to be the ultimate opportunist, which I assume was the first time that was ever mentioned, although I could be wrong. Please correct me down below if you have an idea. So where was he going to go from here? Well, first of all, as a kid watching this, you're not going to assume that Edge was going to cash in on Friday. So it was shocking to me. Obviously, WWE.com reported the cash in. Anyways, on that week's SmackDown, Edge decided it's the right time to cash in. This was after The Undertaker's cage match with Batista, and after Mark Henry returned an assault to the champ. Edge's appearance was met with dissatisfaction from both Michael Cole and JBL, who I should note was as heel as it gets. So the bell rings. Edge goes for the cover, only for The Undertaker to kick out. He kicked out again, and doubt set into Edge's mind. It was this. It's do or die. If he loses, that's it. The beaten Undertaker tried setting up, but was unsuccessful. And then the sick Piranha, Michael Cole's words, then hit the spear, and he was the new World Heavyweight Champion. This time around, Edge was no longer going to be a transitional champion. He was going to be the name and face of SmackDown. Batista was obviously the big baby face, but for some odd reason, Vince didn't want him as champion just yet. Despite being the new champ, Edge still wanted to add insult to injury, and he whacked The Undertaker with a briefcase. The fans booed, Michael Cole's criticizing him, and this planted the seeds for an eventual feud. Well, I should know I gotta do a better job at it, because that was one of my earlier videos. I have to dive into it, because that thing was 9 minutes, when this feud deserves 30. So if I do that one, expect it to be different. Now, was Edge happy about the move? Hell yeah. Not only was he the world champion with a fresh start, but there was someone else he was going to avoid who was on Raw. I'll get into that real soon. Anyways, on the May 14th, 2007 episode of Raw, Edge was prepared to give a farewell speech now that he was a SmackDown star. The fans booed him, and it was obvious that he was ready to rub it in. He said that everybody saw him on Raw last week normally, but then he went on to have the greatest week of any superstar in the history of this industry. Edge said that he could have cashed it in on John Cena, but it was a been there, done that situation, and so he cashed it on possibly the greatest champion there is, The Undertaker. They rolled the footage, and JR was disgusted. The Rated R superstar then added that he thought of leaving the fans with one last great Edge match, but realized the fans don't deserve it, and second, the Great Khali wasn't there. I don't know what the hell that meant. Also, he wanted to be in good condition to face Batista at Judgment Day. So instead of one great Edge match, he was just gonna leave. Unfortunately for him, Shawn Michaels decides to interrupt. Why is that? He thought Edge should just leave. You're here to talk about how you're champion or whatever. Just get out of here. The champion decided, you know what? He took it as a challenge. And so he challenged the Heartbreak Kid to a main event match. He also said that he was going to enjoy beating him just like The Undertaker. Now, if it was anybody else, Edge would have tried weaseling out of a potential match. But since HBK had some minor setbacks, it would have been cherry on top of a historic week for him. Unfortunately for himself, he took a huge L in the middle of the ring. It was as clean as it could get. And the reason why he lost, well, this is what I found. Raw head writer Brian Gerwitz was credited or blamed, depending on your point of view, for booking Shawn Michaels to pin World Heavyweight Champion Edge on his last night on Raw. Gerwitz's explanation was that the guy leaving the territory, or Brand in this case, has to job on the way out. Triple H was the power behind the move because when it was questioned, he supported it, which made it close to a done deal. There's a belief backstage that Triple H doesn't want Edge to succeed, noting that he tried to block all previous plans of him moving to SmackDown and winning the title until Mr. Kennedy went down with an injury, and at this point he couldn't reasonably block it anymore. There was vocal opposition to Edge being pinned, saying that it makes the SmackDown title and champion look secondary. Triple H's argument was that HBK is the biggest tenured star in the brand, and he had just pulled over Khali, and he needs a big win because he'll be wrestling Cena on pay-per-view again within the next few shows. On the other hand, Michaels suggested doing a non-finish, since from his perspective, the key point of the match was for him to be beat down by Randy Orton to promote their match for tonight at Judgment Day. Michaels said he didn't want to bury the SmackDown title, but was told it was Vince McMahon's decision, and he wasn't changing it. As you might imagine, Edge wasn't pleased with the booking decision, and he wasn't hiding his dissatisfaction backstage that night. Edge is said to be very happy to move over to SmackDown because internally, it's considered less political, not to mention that he doesn't have to deal with a certain wrestler as much anymore. Weird story. Do I believe it? I think so, because Triple H, he kind of buried Edge a couple of years ago, in the promo. He said you and RVD never made money, and if you guys were champions, WCW would be running the wrestling industry or something like that.
Edge, Rob Van Dam. If any of those guys had been the face of the WWE, we'd all be working for Ted Turner right now.
You were the WWE champ. I took a nap for 20 minutes and I missed the whole thing.
Yeah, but now he's off to SmackDown where he doesn't have to deal with the game. Edge was given pyro from here on, and he finally delivered a promo on the Blue Show. JBL praised the ever-living hell out of him taking a 180 stance, Last week he was like, don't do it, it's not right. And now he's like, oh, this guy deserves it. He capitalized on the situation or whatever. The new champion wasn't really satisfied with Teddy Long's introduction, and he called himself champion to a chorus of boos. For some reason he stated that he is ashamed to be a Canadian citizen, and he would also be ashamed if he was an American citizen because he had to go so far away from North America to get any respect from fans. He went to New Zealand, Abu Dhabi, France, and another place that lacked respect for him was Monday Night Raw. This got him sick because he defeated just about everybody put in front of him. He was, however, willing to give the SmackDown audience a chance to judge talent based on their skills, not popularity. Edge also said that he was going to take on any and all comers when Teddy Long reminded him of the title match at Judgment Day. The Rated R Superstar claimed he wasn't afraid of Batista, and as a matter of fact, he said that he did in 3 seconds what Batista couldn't do in 3 months, and that's defeat The Undertaker. That line always got him heat, Why is that? Because he simplified it. If you put it simply, yeah, he beat The Undertaker in 3 seconds. And out came Batista. It seemed like Edge was intimidated by the Animal's presence, and the former champion congratulated Edge on his victory before reminding him that the title is his. Hell, he even apologized for needing it back, Sorry, but I'm gonna need it back. He then shook his hand before pulling him in. This was the only confrontation Edge had with Batista because the pay-per-view was that Sunday. The match itself was decent. It was mostly overshadowed by their sequels for an obvious reason, because they were better. Edge had a little promo set to Ozzy Osbourne's I Don't Wanna Stop, which made him seem like this big badass that was very intelligent. The match was short, which I found out was due to CM Punk and Elijah Burke going a little long. Also, maybe it's because of Batista's minor hamstring injury. Anyways, as expected, the Rated R Superstar was cutting the Animal down to size. He worked on the leg and the shoulder. The challenger, though, was a fighter. He took all that punishment, yet found a way to courageously make a comeback. I loved how Batista was selling, at some points with the minor details. Many criticized Batista's in-ring work, but he told a story in there, basically. Like his run, I remember a bunch of storytelling he did in the ring. The fans were fully on his side near the end. The crowd was loud as hell. Edge getting his ass kicked got them cheering, and Batista was absolutely unstoppable. That is until he felt something on his knee, and Edge capitalized to retain his title, and he was basically clutched like Kobe in 07. The situation may have seemed a little dire, but once he found that window of opportunity, that small window, he stole the victory. He 100% made the most out of it, and now he stands still the world champion. Later on that week on SmackDown, he discussed the match of Judgment Day and where he goes from here on. On if the title victory was tainted, he didn't give a damn. He took advantage of the opportunity, and so he stands here as the World Heavyweight Champion. And he also stated that whenever he says the Rated R era is here, it's not just a catchphrase, it's a fact. Before he can finish his promo, Theodore Long interrupted. He let him know that his next challenger will be determined in a fatal 4-way match between Kane, Mark Henry, Finlay, and Batista. Edge didn't really care, though, stating that he's a fighting champion, he'll take on any and all comers, but Teddy put that claim to the test by announcing that the title match at One Night Stand will be a steel cage match. As expected, he got a little worried. Later that night, he sat at ringside providing his insights as Batista punched his ticket to Jacksonville. The world champion was clearly irritated at the results, claiming that it's unfair that he's going to be locked in a cage with an animal. And seeing as he's going to have a match with Batista, the Rated R Superstar extended an invite to his one-night stand challenger for the cutting edge. He once again claimed that Batista was intimidating, blah, 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 I'm better than him, whatever. And JBL foreshadowed what's to come, saying that Edge is unstoppable, and the only thing that could end the Rated R era is an injury. Anyways, Edge was happy to have his opponent on the show, but he straight up told him that he's not intimidated by him. Hell, he even flipped it the other way. Batista is intimidated by Edge. And the animal was ready to break the verbal agreement, you know? He teased it by taking off his jacket, although he claimed it was hot in there. The champ once again said, I did what you couldn't do in 3 months, but Batista reminded him of how it went down. You know, Edge stole the title. He didn't win it fair and square like Batista did. The Rated R Superstar once again went back to Batista in his fear of losing, stating that there's a fear of choking in his mind. He wished Dave good luck, and he passed it back and forth. Yes, you do. You need the luck. No, I don't. Blah, blah, blah. Push came to shove and it escalated with a right hand from Batista. So that's the build-up to the match. Also, Edge lost his voice, I should know. Speaking of their match at One Night Stand, yeah, pretty good. Once again, my opinion. Awesome promo with that song, Famous. It gives a pure 2007 vibe. You know, SVR 2008, obviously. JBL's making Edge seem like some sort of Hulk Hogan-esque champion, stating that even if Batista was at his best, it still might not be enough. Anyways, the match was pretty competitive. Batista looked pretty strong out there despite the results, and that's one thing I liked about his booking from this era. It wasn't this unstoppable monster like Cena, you know, WWWWW. No, he was vulnerable. He actually lost a lot of matches. That's one thing to know. He did kick Edge's ass, but it didn't matter this time around. He had all the momentum, but screwed up the Batista bomb, and Edge climbed out of there. He almost escaped, but Batista managed to drag him down, only to get 2 low blows to fall down onto the ropes, which probably hurt more than both of those low blows combined. The animal opted to escape from the door, and this nearly got him the title, but he missed out by a couple of seconds. So the Rated R Superstar showed that intelligence triumphs skill. As good as Batista was, he just couldn't master the Ultimate Opportunist. He couldn't, figure him out. Yes, good match. It's not my favorite of the trilogy, but still, it was enjoyable when I watched it last time. Later that week on SmackDown, Edge faced Chris Benoit in what would be Benoit's last great WWE match. Vince McMahon, I don't know what the hell he was on that week, announced the last chance match for Batista Vengeance. That Vince thing is a whole other story, but about that Benoit match, there's obviously a reason the match isn't talked about. I assume it's because of the events of later that month, because of the fact that it was so close to the tragedy. But if you look at the match in that time frame, you know, June 6, 2007, it was actually one of WWE's best matches of the year. I'm not going to spoil the results, but if you're comfortable watching Benoit matches, especially from this year, go ahead. With that said, the build-up to the Vengeance match was lacking due to the extensive focus on Mr. McMahon's storyline death. Batista speared Edge. Edge stood tall the week before the pay-per-view after spearing Ric Flair and Batista himself. The final episode saw Flair and the Animal beat the Rated R Superstar and Montel Vontavious Porter. Actually, Batista pinned the world champion, showing that he can do it. You know, he's capable of pinning him. About their match at Vengeance, it's my favorite of the trilogy. Why is that? I have a fond memory of watching it back then. Number 2, high stakes. And 3, it was the conclusion. The steel cage match would have been objectively better, but I prefer this one. Before the match, there was a little backstage segment between Edge and Cena. They were blaming each other for Vince's demise. Cena got Edge to say some potentially incriminating words if he is found guilty. Cena called him a pussbag, to which the world champion stated that he's capable of vicious, vile things that Cena can't comprehend. And the detective on the Vince investigation took notice and I guess took him in for some questioning. Anyways, the match, the promo, I liked them. You know, Gone, that song is on. The promos were just about as good as the matches. That's one thing for sure. It did seem like both men could have had a better match, but it was good enough in my eyes. It might have been bad in your eyes, but for me it was good. A reminder that if Batista loses, he can't challenge Edge for the title. One thing that probably irritated a bunch was the outcome. First of all, let me talk about the match itself. Batista felt like an underdog in a way. He was screwing up during the match and actually took control of the big guy. Once again, he went for the arm, you know, the shoulder to be specific. The Rated R Superstar at one point countered a Samoan drop right into a submission hold. He was very clever, and once again, his intelligence played a part in the result. Eventually, Batista got over the arm and was finally back into it. There were some near falls, you know, Edge hit the Impaler, Batista rolled him up, Edge did it also. It was very dramatic. Counters, roll-ups, false finishes. And the moment Batista hit this spear, the fans were going absolutely bonkers. It felt like the end of Edge's title reign. But the champ went for a blatant low blow to get disqualified. Michael Cole shouting that it's a crime when Teddy Long comes out and restarts the match and stated that if Edge deliberately gets himself disqualified, he loses the title. The fans were cheering. Michael Cole is satisfied and Batista had a second chance. Unfortunately for him, he received a spear. He kicks out. Okay, it's got to be Batista's night, right? Like, if you're watching this for the first time and you see him kick out with a spear, you're thinking it's his night. The fans are going crazy. Edge is doubting himself. Right. It has to be. Edge almost got himself disqualified once again, but remembered what Teddy Long said. Batista attempts the powerbomb, but isn't able to, and instead clotheslines Edge right out of the ring. This is where the animal showed just how smart he was. First of all, he hits the Batista bomb on Edge, right? So the victory's in sight. Well, he tosses Edge back in, and what follows was pretty hilarious if you think about it. He got himself counted out. How the hell do you get yourself counted out when you're that close to the ring? Bro, just dive back in. He was in total control. Yet he screwed himself over. And yes, he did that expression. There it is. Batista, though, wasn't finished. He had another powerbomb, and Edge was finally off to the next challenger. Who is it gonna be? Well, first of all, Batista beat Edge clean on SmackDown that week, but it wasn't for the title. I dived into the past, the internet, once again to see what the original plans might have been for Edge's next challenger. Apparently, it was going to be Rey Mysterio. The idea was nixed because Rey wasn't at 100% just yet, and Vince feared Rey will re-injure himself. So was someone else. I mean, Rey was on the cover of WWE magazine. He was on the cover of the Great American Bash, although that doesn't guarantee someone will return. Well, who knows? Maybe they had some thought into it. On the July 6, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Edge refused to compete. Teddy, though, wanted the World Heavyweight Champion on his show and asked him to at least host the Cutting Edge. Teddy Long proclaimed Edge's guest to be the biggest star who's ever been on the show. Yes, The Rock is back. I always knew he wanted to have a program with Edge. Anyways, the Rated R Superstar came out to close the show with the Cutting Edge, and for some reason, Theodore Long had it out against him because look at the sea of signs. This angered him, obviously. Edge refused to give in to the negative energy and was ready to ask this individual the tough questions. And out he came. Kane. Okay, that was cap, that was lie, that was clickbait. Teddy promised the biggest star in Kane's out here, but he's not wrong though. Kane was probably the largest superstar to appear on the show, so there's that. But yeah, that's misleading. Edge backed off the big red machine and awkwardly tried to chat with him. He gave props to Kane for bringing the Inferno match to the WWE. He praised his motion picture See No Evil before undermining his accolades. Like, while Kane is a former world champion, he, Edge, is a 3-time champion. The Ultimate Opportunist made it seem like they ran out of time and tried leaving, but it was only just getting started. Kane straight up said that he doesn't like Edge before whacking him. He sent the champion sailing to the outside, and the Rated R Superstar shouted Kane will never be a guest on the Cutting Edge again. Hell, he'll never step foot in the ring with him ever again, and Edge's kryptonite came out. Seriously, this guy had it out against Edge. As a matter of fact, this guy's two biggest enemies are Edge and JBL. He revealed that Kane was arranged as a special guest for the Cutting Edge because he's the opponent at the Great American Bash. There it is. The match is official. Unfortunately, though, things went south, and I mean very south, before the pay-per-view. On the July 13th, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Friday the 13th, I should note, a paranoid Edge was getting prepared to have a little Mardi Gras celebration. Kane was playing mind games throughout the night. Edge was looking over his shoulder at nearly every single moment. He was disturbing the champion. And he was getting freaked out. At the end of the night, Edge put it past him to go out and celebrate because, SmackDown was in New Orleans. He was out there without a worry in the world despite his impending match at the Bash. The reason for this celebration was widely unknown, but the assumption was that he was scared of Kane and he wanted to let loose a little. Now, the funny part about all of this was the fact that Edge felt like a babyface. Like, just look at this.
New Orleans!
They're giving you nothing compared to what I'm going to give you.
The biggest party this city's ever seen!
And it was on. The beads were thrown out. He called some guy Reggie Bush, and all was good until the paranoia set in. He speared someone that wasn't Kane, and funny enough, he was right behind him. Kane destroyed the party goers, and it's hard to pinpoint when Edge suffered that injury. Now, initially, the expectation was that it was minor, and there was no reason for Edge to relinquish the title. But Raw and Smackdown began the following week. Teddy Long announced he's going to forfeit the title. Now, I did find out when Edge tore the pectoral muscle, and this is what he had to say about it in an interview back in November of 2007 with Marvel. Link is down below. And I quote, I actually was having a Mardi Gras party. It was in the ring in New Orleans with floats and all the characters. I speared somebody I thought was Kane and came right down on my knee, which drove into my armpit and pulled the pec muscle completely off. I had nothing holding it together in there. I finished up what I had to do, but I knew right away that one's gone. I didn't think it was as bad as it was because I had torn my other pec before, but I only tore half of that one and actually thought this time was not as bad as that one. But it was. They told me that generally, if it doesn't hurt that much, it's worse because of the blunt trauma. So I learned something new that I didn't really want to. And then he was asked if the injury's up there with the most bizarre. This is what he had to say, quote for quote. It doesn't really hold up, right? But it's always things like that where injuries happen. It's like something from Curb Your Enthusiasm. Stuff like that shouldn't happen. JBL had his doubts over Edge's future, and the champion himself seemed completely miserable. Despite being at his lowest, the fans loudly chanted, you suck, and it goes to show what kind of a heel he was. He demanded proper lighting, and he gave us his life story and how he wanted to become a world champion the fans could be proud of. They didn't care and still chanted, "You suck." It was louder this time around. He said that every time he got injured, he came back for all of them. And there was people that doubted whether he could return, and he wanted to prove to himself that he could. Edge called this, the ring, his home, before mentioning how he got injured on SmackDown last week. The champion saw Kane attacking him as gaining an advantage in a pay-per-view match, and blamed him for depriving the fans of the match. Before Edge left, he gave everyone a tribute video to watch. It's got some Full House, Family Matters type music, inspirational. This garnered some heat, obviously. He had tears in his eyes, and Teddy Long told him to just let go of the title. He even told him to come back, win a few matches, and then he'll receive another title shot. Teddy Long announced a 20-man battle royal for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship, and the Rated R Superstar refused to let go. He even asked the fans and Teddy Long, "How could you move on so quickly?" He tearfully shouted that he gave his all, and he wanted the champ to be crowned after 30 days. Teddy Long, though, said that he couldn't do that, just let it go, Edge. Just relinquish the title. And eventually he came to terms. Edge realized he was a 3-time champion and promised to return and make it 4, and it was official. Edge was no longer the World Heavyweight Champion. Now that's in the history books. Anyways, that's Edge's title reign. I had fun making this video. I like going back to the dirt sheet stuff and seeing what was going on, the rumors and all that stuff. And I believe almost all the stuff that I posted here. A lot of stuff is pretty reasonable, made sense to me. At this point, The Undertaker returned and he wanted back his title. Batista gladly accepted even though the match wasn't official. Eventually, it was made for Cyber Sunday. Batista versus The Undertaker for the World Heavyweight Championship. Seeing as there was a vote for whom the special referee will be, JBL decided to try and convince the crowd to vote for him instead of Mick Foley or Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Birmingham, England crowd wasn't feeling him though, and he insulted their national team. JBL's paying tribute to himself when Batista interrupted. He heard enough and he decided to start that interview right now. So JBL at this point, he's bragging about leading the vote for WWE.com when Batista just stopped him there and straight up told him that if you're the ref, stay out of my way. JBL then said that the problem isn't going to be him, it's going to be Batista himself because he's a loser basically. JBL asked if Batista's ever beaten The Undertaker, and he then mentioned, and he said that he read this on Batista's book, an excerpt that basically described Batista's opinion about The Undertaker. Batista's opinion from the book was that he just wanted to be in the same room as him. Like, he had so much respect for The Undertaker that he'd really be happy to just be in the same room as him. Batista, though, denied being afraid of The Undertaker, and JBL left. But now, before calling Batista a coward, this stopped Batista dead in his tracks, and he decided to respond with a spear. JBL's mouth, it's still getting him into fights despite being a color commentator. As for Batista's mindset, first of all, he believed JBL had it coming. And once again, whoever the ref's gonna be, they should stay out of his way. He once again let us know that he isn't afraid of The Undertaker. Sure, he's never beaten him, but there's a first time for everything. JBL continued to ask the fans to vote for him, and he promised to screw over Batista if he wins the vote. When The Undertaker came out, JBL demanded that the dead man wear his t-shirt. Taker didn't wear his shirt, and JBL threatened him, but this would backfire as The Undertaker delivered a thunderous chokeslam. Then Batista came out, and we were hyped for this one. The two stood face to face, and just as The Undertaker stared at the belt, Batista delivered a vicious spear. Now, there was certainly a lot of hype for the rematch. As for the winner of that vote, before I get to a little side note, I remember as a kid I voted for Mick Foley. Yeah, I chose Mick Foley. If that vote happened today, I obviously would have chose Stone Cold Steve Austin. But back then, I don't even know what the hell was going through my mind. The winner of that vote was, well, first of all, JBL entered the ring and he was certain that he won the vote. Then Mick Foley came out and they brawled. But before they did, the results came in and Mick Foley didn't win. JBL didn't win. And it was Stone Cold Steve Austin who was the special referee. Stone Cold then came out and he stunned Foley. And JBL then unloaded on a Texas Rattlesnake. But he failed in his efforts and got a Stone Cold Stunner. As for the main event, this match, I really enjoyed it more than the previous matches. It wasn't even better, but they were the main events. They just went out there and had a good match. I personally believe this is a very overlooked main event. Why did I like this match more than the WrestleMania 23 match? Well, first of all, they main evented the pay-per-view. They once again told a great story. Austin was the referee. Batista was in his hometown of Washington, D.C. And that conclusion, that ending, I loved it. It was similar to the WrestleMania 23 match in general, but those things factor into this being my favorite match of the feud. It was high drama, high stakes, the crowd was into it, the near falls were awesome, and in the end, Batista had to hit 2 Batista bombs to win the match. He finally beat The Undertaker clean. That's what I like. There was no shenanigans, no false finishes, nothing. He beat The Undertaker clean on pay-per-view. Like, how many people get to do that? I know Khali was probably the last guy to do it before Batista, but still, it's an accomplishment to beat The Undertaker on pay-per-view in the main event. So all in all, a match I recommend you watch if you haven't. If you enjoyed their previous matches, then I assume you like this one. It was pretty similar yet different due to a couple of things. On the November 2nd, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Batista was out here to talk about the epic match at Cyber Sunday. He said that he accomplished something that he believed he may never do, and that was beat The Undertaker. He said that it's 2-2 now. They had 2 draws and 1 victory apiece. And he believes that this wasn't over just yet. The Undertaker from out of nowhere appeared and he said that he's got Batista's back in their tag team match later that night. He declared his intentions once again. He wanted the world title. Batista asked if he wanted a rematch and he accepted. As Batista walked away, The Undertaker said 4 words. Hell in a Cell.
Edge had grown into a trustworthy talent, a talent WWE could rely on to hold the world title. So he moved to SmackDown. The move to SmackDown greatly benefited Edge as it allowed for him to leave the likes of Triple H and John Cena in order to forge his own path as a world champion. SmackDown was less dramatic and less political, so he obviously loved it, and coupled with his roots on Friday nights, Edge was a natural on SmackDown. Technically Thursday nights, but you get what I mean. He had plenty of memorable moments in such a short time, but it was all ruined by a shoulder injury. It was his time to run things. He was the #1 guy on Friday nights, but just like that, he had to once again vacate a title. Luckily for Edge though, this injury didn't leave him sidelined for too long. 4 months is a long time in WWE, but when you look at the roster, there was no worries about him losing his spot. Plans were in motion for Edge's return. It was rumored that Crystal Marshall was going to be a bigger character and side with Edge upon his return. And as you guys know, that did happen, except it was Vickie Guerrero. Edge went through a tough rehabilitation process in order to return by November. I don't know if WWE couldn't stop themselves from being excited, but they basically told you Edge was coming. He was on the poster and in commercials of the Survivor Series pay-per-view. A lot of you guys remember, the roster was so light and the returns of Edge and Jericho was basically WWE telling everyone to calm down. With that said, Hell in a Cell between Batista and The Undertaker was incredible. It added so much to their already iconic rivalry. Just as The Undertaker had things wrapped up, Edge came in and once again, he was one step ahead of The Undertaker. He caught him off guard and blasted him with a camera before hitting a concerto, leading to Batista retaining the title. Great moment. Edge was already pissing me off as a kid. This motherfucker was everywhere. You turn around, you see him doing something, he stands tall to end the show on top. He was already pissing me off as a kid on Run. Now we had to see him do this to Batista and Undertaker. He even blasted him after the match. The Rated R superstar was facing some long-term ramifications from his actions at Survivor Series. It's just nobody knew that these ramifications were anything but terrible. Vickie Guerrero scolded Edge and decided to punish him by giving him a World Heavyweight Championship match. He almost couldn't understand this, but ended up revealing that Vickie played a part in his return at Survivor Series, and this man was all up in her face like her name was Lita. Maybe the red hair fooled him, I don't know. But this decision to pair Edge and Vickie added another dimension to this ultimate opportunist character. In doing so, and once again reiterated the fact that Edge would stoop to any level to get what he wanted. And because he was such a compelling character at the time, being able to be this slimy heel, he was rewarded with an even stronger presence on the show. World title is better than anything in the world, so there's that. The world champion Batista couldn't understand why Edge deserves a title shot, and the reasons Vickie gave were weaker than Edge's spear. Later that night, the Rated R superstar hosted the Cutting Edge with his guest being Batista. He asked the fans if it was great to see him again, and they booed. I mean, what the hell do you expect? Your name is Edge. You piss off everyone else. For once, he actually gave credit to somebody for his success, and that was Vickie. Edge also revealed that he had planned this for 4 months, and the culmination was him winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Batista was fuming. I don't know if it's because he's wearing the oversized super duper band-aid on his head, or the fact that Edge and Vickie were plotting. He told Edge to shut up, and straight up said that it makes him sick to see these two. It makes me sick too. Every time they pop up on the screen, I want to look in another direction. And this is when Edge said that he held resentment and bitterness over seeing Batista hold his World Heavyweight Championship. Batista said that he doesn't deserve the title, but he'll deserve the beating, and shoved him before leaving. Then The Undertaker came out and Edge sprinted out of there. You'd be thinking he finally heard about the Wingstop Pistons promo. Vickie, though, was stuck, and The Undertaker made sure to send the Rated R superstar a message with a tombstone pile driver. Now, this was a situation turned on its head. Edge, of course, had a plan, but also felt annoyed that the fans never checked up on him when he was injured. He claimed to contemplate retirement, all because he was going to come back to a company that didn't appreciate him. But then Vickie Guerrero called him. He knew it was for selfish reasons to help SmackDown, but as they started talking, he saw her as a supporting figure and said a corny line. Sometimes you can't help who you fall in love with. At least in his case, he fell in love with someone who had power. Him hiding as a cameraman was Vickie's idea, and taking out The Undertaker, he knew he could beat Batista. Now, for storyline purposes, Edge had grown as a problem in Batista's career. A man that went from being Triple H 3 times in a row turned into the Dallas Cowboys, playoff Dallas Cowboys, anytime he met Edge.
But with that said, Edge promised to destroy The Undertaker for what he did to Vickie. He dedicated the match to Vickie and promised to win the World Heavyweight Championship. As expected, Batista was a tough challenge. The Undertaker, though, made his presence felt and cost him the match. Teddy Long, the assistant GM, came out and gave Edge a rematch, but made it a triple threat match, including The Undertaker for Armageddon. The Undertaker was given the title match as a punishment, similar to how Vickie gave Edge his title shot. Teddy Long questioned Edge's motives towards Vickie and told him that the match at Armageddon is still happening. Edge complained about Teddy having something out for him and making him relinquish the title before 30 days, which was something WWE usually did, you know. If you can't compete in storyline, you have to relinquish the title. While it was annoying for Edge to be involved with all this, it wasn't all bad. Batista accidentally speared The Undertaker, adding more drama to their rivalry. Vickie returned the following week, all traumatized from the incident. Edge wanted to avenge her, but didn't want to have a match to do it. It was a tough challenge. 54 overall Funaki. Edge won, obviously, but Vickie was out here booking like it was GM mode, giving Batista a freaking last man standing match against Kane, and The Undertaker a handicap match against these two. Edge cost Batista the match against Kane, and Taker managed to overcome the two big guys. They attacked him after the match, and Edge stood tall to end the show on top. Decent build. It was all about establishing Edge's motives to reclaim his world championship. His methods were somewhat unconventional, trying to gain power by getting with the GM of SmackDown, and anything but a win would render the story pointless. So you know they had to book Edge as the winner here. Especially because it was about The Undertaker getting redemption and finally overcoming Edge, who was one step ahead of him throughout this entire feud. The match itself was good. This was right before Batista hit his peak as an in-ring performer. Maybe you can say he did, but regardless, this was his best era in-ring. Edge managed to win the title in a unique way, though. This guy brought out some clones and took advantage of a situation to win the World Heavyweight Championship for the second time. That was a weird-ass moment, seeing these two lookalikes come out. They always booked them to have these crazy-ass ideas, to get a single moment to take advantage and win a title. It was crazy. Later that week on SmackDown, Edge was presented with the World Heavyweight Championship. He thanked Teddy Long shockingly and called his fans the Edgeheads. The Major Brothers came out and he thanked them as well. He said that these two wanted to make an impact and introduce themselves as Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. And they cut some dry-ass 20-second promos. I like to listen to rock and roll. Oh, I like cuddling with my girl. Terrible promo, bro. This promo is horrible. Edge played a video package of himself and Vickie, and it was goofy. The new champion also thanked Batista for filling in as champion when he was injured, but said that later tonight, this will be the image the fans see. About that, Edge was on the verge of losing the title, but his guys made the save, and they took out the animal with a concerto. With the Royal Rumble coming up, a beat the clock challenge was made. Rey Mysterio was the last man to get the chance to potentially win the whole thing, but his opponent was Edge. He was the biggest threat, so Edge took matters into his own hands. This didn't work the way Edge wanted it to. The Undertaker and Batista came out and cost him the match, leading to Rey Mysterio winning the title shot. Rey had some history with Vickie, and that would be explored during this feud. She congratulated him on the win, but he felt weird about it. Now, despite their issues, Rey wanted to move forward, but questioned this whole thing with Edge. He knew that it wasn't her, and you guys know that they're gonna mention him. You guys know they're gonna mention the guy that's on your mind right now. And they did. They did mention Eddie Guerrero. Vickie said that Eddie would want her to move on and have Edge as a father figure. This guy as a father figure, okay. The world champion came out and immediately went after Rey for what he said. He told him that he's gonna beat him at the Rumble, and Vickie and him will still be in love. Rey agreed about the love part. Not about the world championship though. Chavo Guerrero came out. Now he had a problem with Rey, but he also couldn't believe Vickie calling herself a Guerrero after signing with Edge. The Rated R Superstar immediately went on the defense, but this drama would calm down with Chavo agreeing that Vickie could move on, and he was brought into La Familia. The duo made an impact later that night, destroying Rey Mysterio. It was a very dull build. The focus was just about getting things over with. But the Raw Rumble match between the two, good match between the two. Rey was finally getting comfortable after returning. They teased Rey winning. Vickie took the 619 and saved Edge from losing, leading to the midair spear. Good match. It's just the fact that it was very predictable. Everyone knew that Edge was going to retain here because the story involved him and The Undertaker. Rey was just in as an additional roadblock. So that's why I didn't have much to say about this as opposed to the previous feud. You know, I just didn't have much to say. Edge was still pissed though since he had to face Rey at No Way Out. It went from bad to worse as Rey and CM Punk beat La Familia in tag team action. Edge's problems mostly revolved around Vickie Guerrero taking that 619 at the Rumble. He called her a selfless person for that. He promised her something for next week, but as for now, he called out Rey Mysterio and demanded an apology from him. Vickie slapped the hell out of him and followed up again. This turned out to be an ambush and both men had a brawl. Edge tried to bring out the chairs but ended up taking a 619. Mysterio managed to rebound and give everybody a preview of No Way Out. Then he decided to apologize to Vickie Guerrero. On the final SmackDown before No Way Out, Edge brought out Vickie Guerrero to ask a question. This was the day after Valentine's Day, and he proposed to her, and she accepted. Rey Mysterio ruined this moment and said that this was the most disgusting thing he's seen in his life. Top 5 for me. He was also hoping Vickie would drop the Guerrero name because she's disgracing it. He asked Edge, let's see how much Vickie loves you after you lose at No Way Out, and he took a 619 before Vickie took the seated senton. Edge was enraged. The night of celebration goes off again. This build was much better than the Rumble one. Rey seemed more of a legitimate challenger here. Not that he wasn't before, but it worked much better here. Unfortunately though, Rey suffered a bicep injury in Chile, and this match was shortened to 5 minutes. Edge managed to beat Rey clean and move on to WrestleMania. Okay. The Undertaker, meanwhile, won the SmackDown Elimination Chamber to win the right to challenge the Rated R Superstar at WrestleMania. Edge called himself a predator, an opportunist, and to him, ending the streak was a great opportunity. He claimed he was like the Undertaker being undefeated at WrestleMania. WWE just tried to use Edge's singles WrestleMania run as a way to compare both men, because Edge lost at WrestleMania 23, so he wasn't undefeated anymore. Edge said, unlike the fans, he takes his opportunities. That's why he's champion. The question of who will beat the Undertaker has been asked for 15 years. They've all fallen one by one. Edge said that he won't fail. He'll be the one to end the streak. All of a sudden, the lights go out and the Undertaker came out. The dead man went after all 3 members of La Familia and set the champion running. The following week, the Undertaker called out Edge and his guys to have a match. He was talking about the match with Zack Ryder. Taker had just taken out Big Daddy V, so this was a tough challenge. At least for Ryder, not for The Undertaker. Ryder actually managed to stay in the match, but Undertaker wrapped it up. Hawkins and Edge come in and try to take him out, but failed. The Undertaker just started using a triangle choke submission hold, and everybody that was locked in couldn't get out of the hold. In an effort to combat The Undertaker, Vickie Guerrero booked a handicap match between The Undertaker and La Familia. At the same time, though, he got into some drama with Ric Flair. Edge's plan didn't work. He managed to beat The Undertaker and prove that he can get it done. With that said, Edge and Ric Flair faced off in a handicap match. Edge had a lot of help by his side, whereas Flair had Shawn Michaels. The steel cage match was chaotic. The Undertaker came in and once again took out a bunch of guys. Edge made a run for it, and The Undertaker was still using his new submission hold, Hell's Gate, to take out others. Edge finally took advantage of him and managed to drop him with a concerto. On the final SmackDown before WrestleMania, Edge held a funeral for The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. The World Champion gave a speech about the streak and said he'll bury him and the streak. Edge was determined to eclipse The Undertaker's streak. He was driven by being the one to accomplish this. They played a video package of Edge breaking the streak, and he went on talking about how Vickie is the love of his life. The Undertaker came out from the casket and went on the attack. Number 1, never have a wedding in wrestling. Number 2, never have a closed casket in the middle of the ring. He chokeslammed Edge into the casket, took out La Familia, and gave everyone a sign of what's to come at WrestleMania. Okay. Edge's fixation on ending the streak has brought him down a path that many have walked through. They all failed. The Undertaker answered and overcame every challenge ahead and left a path of destruction. 15 tries and they all fell. Few of them have actually overcame The Undertaker himself, but never on the stage of WrestleMania. Edge believed he was the one due to his own undefeated streak in combination of being an opportunist and lucky. It served Edge well throughout his entire career. Why can't it work this time around at WrestleMania? This was Edge's first main event at WrestleMania and SmackDown's first main event in 5 years. The match itself was amazing. We're not going to try to make it seem like this match is good. It was actually great. Edge was one step ahead of Taker throughout it and showed great composure. In his eyes, he had the advantage because Taker never beat him. He found out that the challenger had a significant amount of resiliency. Edge was countering everything, but The Undertaker was constantly kicking out. Since this wasn't working, Edge used the camera when the ref got knocked down, and Charles Robinson had to run down from WrestleMania 23 itself or something to get to the ring right when The Undertaker hit the Tombstone Piledriver. Edge, though, kicked out at 2. Hawkins and Ryder came in, took a chokeslam, and Edge capitalized with a spear. 1, 2, no. He hit another one, but The Undertaker locked in Hell's Gate. Edge was desperately trying to reach the ropes, but he couldn't. He was gasping for air, moving all around, flopping around like a fish on land. But he couldn't get out of the hold, he couldn't escape, and tapped out. New champion! The Undertaker finally overcame the Rated R Superstar and regained the World Heavyweight Championship. 16-0 at WrestleMania. There was a lot of things special with this match. Edge knew he had a lot riding on this main event and being trusted to go out there with The Undertaker and have a great match. It main evented over Flair and HBK, the Triple Threat WWE Championship match, and Floyd versus Big Show. I think we gotta run back this entire WrestleMania. I haven't watched it in about 7 years. Now, even though Edge was a heel and somebody that already did well for himself at the time, WWE somewhat considered having him end the streak. Here's what he had to say in an interview, and I quote, "In the lead up to it, I was asked, what do you think about ending the streak? And I said no." Edge said, "Adamantly no. I don't think it ever should have ended until what we knew was his final WrestleMania. And then even no. I just didn't think it was right. At this point, it was like the streak was never going to end."
Around 2007, Johnny Nitro already had a decent resume behind him. 2-time tag team champion, 2-time intercontinental champion. He was only in the early part of his career. Some did have high hopes for him and expected the guru of greatness to ascend to the highest level. However, in his road to success, Nitro experienced a hell of a lot of bumps. WWE never seemed to take him that seriously compared to others. His charisma alongside his unorthodox high-flying moveset made Morrison one of the most popular wrestlers in his first run. Is it a case of not striking when the iron's hot? Well, in my opinion, yeah. But with that said, yes, I'm gonna do more Johnny Mundo, Nitro, Morrison, whatever the hell you want to call him, videos. I'm very interested in talking about what he did in Lucha Underground, and I feel that's where other people started liking him more. Here in 2007, though, he was in an awkward situation. What I mean by that is after losing the Intercontinental Championship, he was directionless. It also didn't help that Joey Mercury was released in March of 2007. However, this Pro Wrestling Insider report says the contrary. WWE management has high hopes for Johnny Nitro. A big part of the reason they moved him to ECW was to split him from real-life girlfriend Melina. Management thinks Melina is a major distraction towards the growth of Nitro as a performer due to her bad social behavior and reputation. So Nitro was drafted to ECW, and I'd say his career took a positive turn. Within his first week, Nitro was called up to replace Chris Benoit for the title match at Vengeance Night of Champions. This was apparently due to a family emergency, at least that's what the belief was at that time, and it's a noticeable downgrade, but nonetheless, Nitro's gonna make the most out of it. He was booked to win the title, much to the shock of the audience, and we all know what happened afterwards. Now, according to Nitro himself, this was a change that he was hoping would occur. And I quote, that whole day, it was supposed to be Benoit versus Punk, and then Benoit didn't show up, so like 3 hours later, WWE officials were like, what are we gonna do? Chris isn't here. Like, we're either going to have to replace him, well, who's on ECW? And they're like, Morrison and Kevin Thorne, one of those two. And then for 2 hours, I was like, please don't show up, Chris. Please let it be me and not Kevin Thorne. And he ended up not showing up. I ended up winning, and I was super excited and happy. And then when we found out what happened, I felt like the biggest douchebag in the world. It was really crappy. It was a really crappy, tragic situation. Damn. Just so weird to think about. Still to this day, it just feels weird, you know. John Morrison, Johnny Nitro, he won the title because of an incident that we do not like to talk about. It's basically like that, you know. He was hoping that Benoit didn't show up. I would feel very, very off about this whole situation. In light of that tragedy, John Cena paid a visit to ECW 2 days later to face the new champion, Johnny Nitro. This match wasn't no squash or anything like that, and he managed to hold his own. But as expected, though, Nitro lost because 1, this was the face of the company, and 2, this was 2007 John Cena, who was essentially the 2007 Patriots. It's definitely a very forgotten gem. Following this, the new champion blamed this loss on an illness. He twisted this in his favor and told Punk and Burke that regardless of the number 1 contender, no one's taking the title away from him. A few minutes later, they had one of their world famous matches, but seriously, no lie, this wasn't bad. Punk, of course, scored the W to receive a title shot, and all Nitro could do is remind him who's champion. As a result of the match being booked for the Great American Bash, each man was allowed to choose their opponent's challenger for the following week. Nitro got Tommy Dreamer. Dreamer was a tough opponent, but Nitro had that new champion's boost and won it clean. As for CM Punk, he got Kevin Thorne. Again, the match was a struggle, but he found a way out, only for Thorne to attack him afterwards. The champion thought it was best to attack here, but almost paid the price. For some reason, they booked a rematch the following week, with Nitro facing Tommy Dreamer in an Extreme Rules match. Despite his back against the wall, the champion showed that he's real comfortable in an extreme environment. Man was being whacked with trash cans, drop kicked without any warning, but he adapted to the situation and drop toe hold Dreamer to win it. What? A drop toe hold? 2007 version of me would kick out of that damn thing, but Tommy Dreamer couldn't. I don't want to sound whiny about that. It's just funny to me. But with that said, July 17, 2007, at least from my perspective, is one of the most memorable nights in Johnny Nitro, John Morrison's career. Once the sun set, it was revealed that Nitro was holding a press conference. His agent revealed that this was the final night Johnny Nitro is on ECW. Later that night, he reiterated the statements, much to the excitement of the fans. Turns out, he changed his name. To what that is, well, nobody knew yet. But one thing to note is that Nitro substantially changed his look. I remember as a kid thinking he changed his face or something, but then again, I was a dumbass. All things considered, Nitro said that he's not called that anymore. His name is John Morrison, and apparently it was his birth name. Man started flexing on about a bunch of things. He started walking at 4 months old. He skipped first grade for third grade. Who's he lying to? And get this, he was voted student body president even though he wasn't even in the running, and in college he led his basketball team to a 34-point comeback. Man was like Tracy McGrady. But in spite of all this, there was still doubts coming from the fans. Morrison assured them that he will retain the title at the Great American Bash before poking fun at Punk's name. All of a sudden, the challenger interrupted and he was full of fury. The champion told Punk that this ain't no wrestling match, it's a press conference before asking about his name. Fans start chanting his name, and all of a sudden Morrison delivers a shot cheaper than a DQ victory before dropping him with a neck breaker. Of course, in light of all this, you're wondering, why the name John Morrison? According to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, they changed Johnny Nitro's name because the feeling was that it was not serious enough and he's now in a world champion position.
Vince felt people wouldn't take him seriously with the gimmicky Johnny Nitro name, and a whole bunch of people, including Dusty Rhodes, Dave Lagana, WWE.com writer Jen Hunt, and others came up with suggestions for a new name. Vince picked the John Morrison name, and that one was likely chosen because the similarities between Hennigan and the deceased 60s rock star Jim Morrison are quite striking. As for Morrison himself, he said something a little different, and I quote, "Basically, Vince McMahon thought that Nitro reminded him of WCW when I became the ECW champion. Like, he had a couple of times mentioned to me, if you're going to be a real star, you need a real name. Just one day, he was all, you gotta change your name. So I made a list of names that day. Mostly movie star names. John Brando Morrison, Dean Brando Morrison, Brando. Anyways, a whole bunch of weird things. I had a couple of Johnny Hollywood type things in there too. They just eventually settled on John Morrison because they liked my look as compared to Jim Morrison. It's what they went with, and it's what I'm known as now. I mean, Morrison does resemble Morrison, and honestly, it was an improvement over Nitro, who had a much lower ceiling in my opinion. That wouldn't matter, obviously, looking at it now. And the topic of Sunday, well, it's one of the matches that ever happened. You see, what Punk was talking about in his documentary was true. Morrison and himself didn't have the best matches. It's like you eat something and think, that's it. There's one match in particular that contradicts this, but I'll get to that later. This match, though, is extremely basic. Didn't have much going for it. There was no compelling story, none of that. Punk has the advantage early on. Morrison drops him off the steps, fails to hit a suplex, and it's time for the comeback. The journey to the thing we call the final third just wasn't interesting. Obviously, when they got there, it picked up and the match catches your eye, but even then, it ended from out of nowhere after Morrison kneed Punk in the midsection for the win. This is the second time that John Morrison won the match with a basic move. Yes, he was the victor, and Punk once again lost to him clean. On the July 24th episode of ECW, the quote, greatest ECW champion of all time was here to issue an open challenge. First of all, he rubbed the victory in everyone's face. Morrison told CM Punk that his destiny is to be surrounded by darkness without the ECW title to brighten his existence. So this is when he started cutting those odd promos about the Palace of Wisdom. With Punk in the rearview mirror, Morrison thought it was necessary to have a 15-minute of fame match. Basically, if you withstand 15 minutes, you get a title shot. Then all of a sudden, this guy straight out of Techno 2000 comes out, and since Morrison was wearing his street clothes, you know how this went. He got his work done in less than a minute. Now, at the same time, he was multitasking, because later that night, he teamed up with Elijah Burke to face Tommy Dreamer and CM Punk. While the champion didn't feel the wrath of a GTS, his partner certainly did, and it was clear that this feud wasn't over. Of course, in other places, Morrison bragged about giving opportunities and continued the 15 minutes of fame challenge. After roasting Paris Hilton, he introduced his opponent who, well, I don't know what to say, really. I did think he resembled somebody, and yes, it's of course Joey Ryan. And he also lost in 20 seconds. The champ was now overzealous, saying he's the shaman of sexy, and he got Taz laughing. All of a sudden, Tommy Dreamer came out and talked about how he's been in the industry longer than 15 minutes. And I should note that he forgot to mention that he lost by a drop toe hold. Elijah Burke followed and said that Dreamer is prehistoric when it comes to ECW, and questioned the whole 15-minute thing, telling him that he's 15 years past his time. Damn. He laid his claim for a title shot, and all that was missing was a certain straight-edge individual. CM Punk asked for one last shot, but Morrison declined, saying he went through a grueling match. This man's entrance was more of a struggle than the damn match. However, he wanted these three to face off in a match with the winner challenging him next week, and then if he loses, or if they withstand the 15 minutes, they get the title shot. What a stretch. It's like buying a PS5 at retail price. You have to go through this big-ass hassle, and who knows if you get what you want. As expected, CM Punk scored the W. What this meant was he was going to face him in a 15-minute of fame match. Ahead of the match itself, Morrison told him that they don't serve Pepsi at the Palace of Wisdom and proclaimed tonight to be the end of Punk's relevancy. The straight-edge wrestler, on the other hand, said that he's going to approach this match the way he's always approached matches. Simple as that. So about this one, both men were given plenty of time. 15-minute time limit, of course, and I'd say it was better than the last two matches. Morrison early on managed to hold Punk back from breaking through and doing something. He then responded in a huge way, but it didn't result in a victory just yet. After the commercial, there was only 4 minutes left, and all Punk had to do was not lose. Simple as that. The pressure was on Morrison, and he upped the intensity and aggression, but the problem was, he was accidentally time-wasting and screwed himself over. Momentum was by the opponent's side, but even then he wanted the victory. Punk didn't want to withstand the time, and from out of nowhere, though, Morrison connected with a backbreaker, neckbreaker combo. At this point, it was high drama, and it felt like anything could happen. Punk with a roll-up, Morrison with a kick to the face, and with 20 seconds left, the champion decided to wrap it up. Nope, he's calling the GTS. 1, 2, 3. Punk won it with 5 seconds left. All they did was add a timer and made this match more dramatic. It was slowly building to those final moments, and because of this, the match was way better than the last ones. After that, Punk finally beat Morrison, showing that he was actually capable of doing it. With Armando Alejandro Estrada, the new ECW GM, his first order of business was to hold a contract signing for the ECW title match at SummerSlam. already. Morrison roasted Punk and said that this is the closest he'll ever be to earthly paradise. What's even funnier is that he said Punk couldn't last 15 minutes in the ring with him. He offered a sound rebuttal to this, mentioning the victory, and so the champion took this discussion to a different place, saying Punk is not capable of being champion. In a moment's notice, he was shut up, and CM Punk said that while he didn't wear fur coats in August, he'll be wearing the ECW title at SummerSlam. Seeing as these two were all fired up, Estrada booked the two men in some tough matches. Punk was first and he faced Big Daddy V. Unfortunately for him, it didn't really end so well, but Morrison, on the other hand, had a better outing than Punk did. Matter of fact, he lost only because he was so aggressive, but it didn't matter because Boogeyman dropped him a few seconds later. It almost got worse, but the Guru of Greatness saved himself. Unfortunately for him, he took yet another L to CM Punk on Saturday night's main event, managed to bounce back in a tag match on ECW. With regards to SummerSlam, yeah, it was much better than I expected, because everyone talks about these matches like it's Triple H and Orton. The action after the third minute was ridiculously fast. Morrison was taking a beating from Punk, who was relentless on the attack, but he got too ambitious, and from out of nowhere, Morrison cheated to win it. It always got close, but it wasn't enough. Anyways, Morrison gloated about setting the night on fire later that week and said that he created a new reality for CM Punk. All of a sudden, he began roasting his potential opponents. Boogeyman, it takes more than worms to scare him. The Miz, he talks about being a chick magnet, but actions speak louder than words, and he obviously didn't count playing with himself in the shower as a thing. Big Daddy V, it's best for humanity if he doesn't win. And CM Punk, well, same thing Morrison said earlier. His 15 minutes of fame are up. So basically, in a nutshell, the champion brushed off all potential opponents and made them seem like schmucks. Those four men would face off in a fatal four-way match with the winner challenging for the ECW title, and yes, CM Punk won it. Now, the reports at the time say John Morrison was set to hold the title for a while. The show was being built around him, so to speak, but at a moment's notice, that would all change as Morrison was one of the 10 wrestlers suspended for violating the wellness policy, the signature pharmacy scandal. I'll dive deep into that in the Dark Summer of 07 video, but for now, we got John Morrison. In light of Morrison's suspension, we all know how it went, but it's about the journey there. At this point, the ECW roster, hell, the WWE roster was thinner than my collection of WCW videos. It was a big problem here, and basically, even if they didn't want CM Punk to win it, they didn't have anybody else. Armando Estrada finally acknowledged Punk's losses and said that if he does it again tonight, well, he could never challenge for the title. As for the champion, he saw himself as a person who the fans could believe in, and whatever Punk says, it's illusions, and he doesn't even look like a champion. He picks his tattoos from a coloring book and said, quote, "You look like a straight-edge Blink-182 groupie who cried himself to sleep when he couldn't sneak backstage." Morrison promised to show why he's champion tonight as well. Fast forward to the end of the night, and when I tell you this match was good, I mean it. For me, it's a top 3 match from this iteration of ECW, hell, maybe even top 2. The story heading into it was simple. CM Punk couldn't quite keep Morrison's shoulders down on the mat when it mattered the most. He earned these opportunities and even beat Morrison in a couple of non-title matches, and it was do or die. Unlike Matt Hardy post-2005, in big match situations, he didn't die here. One thing to mention is that Cincinnati was going crazy over him. They played their roles extremely well and the night was perfect. From the moment where they were trading holds, the crowd was very into the match. The challenger mostly edged Morrison out with swift kicks and springboards. Hell, after the commercial break, he was stuck in a headlock. In spite of CM Punk's lethal offense, the champion had him scouted. Now, of course, the pace was slow from here on. Fans were hyping up Punk in an effort to bring him back in, but that wouldn't be the case for a while, barring this quick roll-up. Then from out of nowhere, Morrison was caught with this very impactful suplex, and the thud that came from it was something else. And the comeback was initiated. Johnny was in trouble here, the title was slowly being pried away, and Punk looked damn near unstoppable. Add to that, the entire crowd was on his side, and from out of nowhere, Morrison managed to hit the Starship Pain, yet Punk kicked out. This is when the match turned into something else. Each man traded roll-ups. Morrison was caught cheating. He failed to connect to the springboard, and before he knew it, he took the GTS. 1, 2, 3, new champion. What a match. These guys finally clicked, and they did it in a very huge way. The fans saw CM Punk's misfortunes throughout the summer. From losing at Vengeance to SummerSlam, and before the match even began, they were going crazy for him. They were invested in his journey, and Morrison, on the other hand, played his role to a T. Nobody in the arena was cheering or chanting his name. Everyone was with the babyface, and the entire thing was filled with electricity and excitement. I'm not overrating or overstating how good this match was, it's just that. Also, that last chance stipulation added a bit to the match. There was a lot of uncertainty with the results, and I could say without any doubt that this was a pay-per-view quality match in every sense of the word. It's probably my top 10 WWE matches of 2007. It was truly a remarkable encounter. With that said, Johnny Nitro's transition into John Morrison was well done in my opinion. One thing I liked is that it wasn't just treated as a name change. Morrison changed his look a bit. His talking cadence was a stark contrast to how he usually spoke, and the verbiage itself was very different. He'd be talking about being the guru of greatness or the palace of wisdom, and he was basically a delusional man who was spewing randomness. Like that one time, he's like, CM Punk's destiny is to be surrounded by darkness without the ECW title to brighten his existence. Those random quotes got me cackling while making this video. It's a shame that his reign ended abruptly, but at least Morrison dropped it to CM Punk at the right time, because that man was losing far too much. We're here to talk about the Save Us Y2J era. The era where he was promising to save the fans from men like Randy Orton, but lost himself into his own selfishness and ego, which led to Chris turning his back on the very same people that he promised change to. In his mind, he was this hero who was going to conquer these villains and bring forth change. However, this did not go to plan. I should also note this video in particular is not about the HBK feud. I'm just talking about Jericho's beginnings. The HBK feud would be in a separate video. With that said, Chris Jericho up to 2007 had a good career. It was full of accolades, classic matches, and feuds. And yes, it might be great, but I'm just talking about that like Hall of Fame headliner type career. If he were to have actually retired in 2005, he would have been praised endlessly, but not on the level that he is today. Even then, some people think he should let go before he becomes Ric Flair. But anyways, let's go back to this time period. So around here, Jericho had enough of wrestling. Not in the sense of I hate this thing, but in the sense of I'm exhausted, I want to spend time with my family. Even then, Jericho put over John Cena on his way out and had an embarrassing exit that was his idea. In his time away, Chris Jericho focused on Fozzy, and it wasn't like he was entirely out of wrestling. Every once in a while, he'd appear on WWE.com to answer a few questions, speak about wrestling in interviews, and even teased appearing with TNA. I couldn't find the video, but they showed this clip of him with his back to the camera. And you know, mid-2000s internet, they always make up these lies with the copy and paste Photoshop stuff, but regardless, Jericho at face value looked like he was flirting with TNA. Rumblings from the Torch and the Wrestling Observer claimed that TNA were very interested in bringing in Jericho, but the word is that regardless, he was going to WWE. There wasn't much reporting on that until January of 2007. Since Y2J was a troll, he added fuel to the fire in an interview with TNAWrestling.com. Y2J was asked if he does return, would it be in a 4-sided ring or a 6-sided ring? He said, I've actually been working on a 5-sided design for the Rhomboid Wrestling Federation that I think is going to take off like gangbusters. Besides that, there ain't never been a 4-sided ring that could contain Jericho. Nobody knew if negotiations were heating up, but at the end of the day, Jericho did not close the door on a TNA deal. At the same time, he was trying to get a feel for things. So he started taking autograph signings to know if the fans want him back. After seeing a bunch of old-timers, Jericho had an epiphany. He was 36 and was doing these signings like he retired. Add to that, John Cena and Shawn Michaels had that classic match on Raw in London that motivated Jericho to get off his couch, drop his guitar, and put his wrestling gear on. He didn't do it outright, but it was the beginning. Suddenly he began speaking to Chris Benoit more, and he was very supportive of a return, saying, quote, the business misses you. The fans miss you. The locker room misses you. I miss you. I think you should come back. He was excited to train him, but then you know what happened. After all of this, Dixie Carter still wanted to meet with Jericho, whose intentions were still to return to WWE. Y2J used this to his advantage and leaked out that he had a meeting. On September 5, 2007, Pro Wrestling Torch reported, Chris Jericho received a large, presumably 7-figure monetary offer to return to World Wrestling Entertainment. WWE has expressed interest in bringing Jericho back for a while. The two parties have communicated regularly over the past several months, and Jericho, who walked away from professional wrestling in 2005, is now reportedly fully willing to return to wrestling. A source close to the wrestler says that Jericho recognizes that his Hollywood aspirations are not going to provide a short-term monetary reward anywhere near that of WWE's offer. At this point, Jericho's return merely hinges on the two parties reaching a workable arrangement. Once the two sides agree on terms, and it is unknown how long that will take to happen, it could be as short as a few weeks to as long as many months, Jericho is expected to rejoin the WWE roster. I assume this is when the TNA rumor flew around. Jericho just wanted a little leverage so WWE could meet his demands, and they did, meaning Y2J was back on the WWE roster. For the creative process of his return, Jericho said, I wanted to make my return to the WWE as unique and impactful as my debut was 8 years earlier. I didn't want to repeat the countdown clock again, so I was looking for something a little more cryptic. Then the idea struck to use the phrase second coming, while incorporating the black and green binary codes I'd seen while watching The Matrix a few nights earlier. I flew to WWE headquarters in Stamford to meet with Vince and Bryan and pitch them my concept. My idea was a 4-week run of vignettes that would begin with the binary codes filling the screen with computer-generated 2s. In the second week, all but one of the 2s would disappear. Then in the third week, the 2 would grow to the size of the screen and morph into the words, Second Coming. I would show up on the 4th week and make my grand return. Vince listened to my ideas, nodded, and agreed to the concept in about 2 minutes. His only caveat was that he wanted the vignettes to run for more than 4 weeks. And when did these vignettes pop up? September 25th, 2007. The first vignette in itself had this grandiose feeling to it. Also, by the sounds of it, it sounded like they were doing business during the vignette. And since this was the internet, they found out who it was. At face value, it of course gives off the Y2J vibe, but they found some tiny ass stuff such as CD Volume 4 1.act. What does that mean? It meant Volume 4, Track 1, and would you look at that? More clues continued as the weeks went by, and Jericho continued denying he was behind these vignettes, claiming he never even saw them. Fans continued speculating where Jericho's debut was, and some even believed that it would occur at No Mercy. During the show, the Chicago fans repeatedly chanted for Jericho, to which McMahon responded, "I'm not gonna give you that." They chanted it a few minutes later, and he went nuts. At this point, it was the worst kept secret. Jericho's book signing locations were always coinciding where WWE was at the time as well. In other places, he struggled with regaining his old form, and he said that when his body landed on the wrestling mat, it felt extremely painful and he had to adapt. At the same time, he wanted a new finisher, something that he could do at a moment's notice, and so he's inspired to do an Unprettier-esque move. The problem was, Candice Michelle performed this very same move, so he was inspired to do the Code Breaker. And when asked straight up about returning on the hour, he said, "It's coming."
You're coming back, aren't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation, but eventually I'll be back.
Earlier that week on Raw, the code was exposed. X plus 1 equaled Y, and 9 plus 1 equaled J. Around here, the rumors were not denied, and WWE seemed to give up. Like Jericho, he basically admitted, "I'm coming back." He just didn't say when. But on WWE's case, they basically exposed when, because on November 13th, 2007, the holiday issue of WWE magazine leaked, and the man himself, Y2J, was on the front cover. In the magazine, Jericho was asked, "How are you going to top your previous self?" He responded saying, "That's like asking Axl Rose to top Appetite for Destruction. He can't. All he could do is get Chinese democracy done and make it as good as he can. If you're obsessed with topping your past work, it ain't gonna happen." Chinese democracy may have not been the iconic highlight for Guns N' Roses, but the best for Chris Jericho is certainly yet to come. On the November 19th, 2007 episode of Raw, hot off the heels of Survivor Series, the WWE Champion Randy Orton wanted to celebrate his title victory at Survivor Series in grand fashion. He wanted to commemorate this victory. So he thought a torch runner was necessary for this occasion. He was running from Miami all the way to Fort Lauderdale, and he had been hyping him up throughout the night. And unless Rikishi ran him over and did it for The Rock, he was expected to arrive to the arena before the end of the show. In anticipation, Randy Orton RKO'd several wrestlers throughout the show. He came out at the end and said that he'd beaten all that there is to beat, and there's the torch runner. He's excited. He's got a smile on his face, but then he took a damn clothesline. Douche move, but the crowd doesn't care because they just seen a familiar face, or back in this case. The code is solved and there's the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pyro, and there's Chris Jericho. After over 2 years, he was finally back, and his departure at face value feels like it was 4 years earlier, but it was only 2. Since then, a lot happened in the wrestling world, but the fans didn't forget about Y2J. Jericho himself didn't expect this type of reception, feeling that since the crowd had been Cena-fied, the kids wouldn't recognize him. By the sounds of it, he was definitely wrong. Orton, the man whose ceremony was pissed on and thrown to the trash, was utterly livid. The returning Y2J welcomed everyone to Raw as Jericho, and it didn't feel like he changed much. He brought us some of that classic Y2J energy, leading to Randy Orton saying it's a blessing that he didn't stay because he would have kicked his head off. Then he asked the returning hero, "What are you saving us from?" So he responded saying he's saving the fans from Orton's boring personality, his frying pan of a head, his voice, all kinds of things, but most importantly, he was back to save the fans from Orton himself. Jericho promised to take that title away, and when he does, Raw, WWE, the universe itself will never ever be the same again. The fans played along, and it was an exciting moment. Jericho didn't lose a step in the promo department. Of course, you can't be expecting him to cut an iconic promo on his first night. He made some bizarre references like Blue Ball Magazine, but the crowd reacted well to everything. They shouted never louder than I would have asked about an Edge and Matt Hardy video. But despite this, Chris himself wasn't as positively receptive to his return promo, feeling that it was outdated. It felt like a greatest hits-esque type of thing, but I can't say it was wrong of him to do, Fans remember Y2J, the guy that always used to crack jokes, make fun of people, and they were accepting of seeing him all in his glory like it was 2000. And I will say this, you can say he looked like Gordon Ramsay, Neil Patrick Harris, but at the end of the day, he was a welcoming return. The star power around the end of 2007 was somewhat recovering, and after the likes of John Cena and Bobby Lashley were away, Chris Jericho was needed. From his perspective, it looked like a great opportunity to slot into the main event role and possibly win the title. He had teased this in a few interviews in the past, however, things didn't go the way he intended to. The following week on Raw, he tried to make an attempt to simplify what he wanted to Randy Orton. Me want title match. Honestly, it sounds like something he would have done in the past. Santino then interrupted and started calling him KYJ, and he said that
Jericho looked like a bum who bypassed security looking like Lindsay Lohan with that haircut. Jericho wasn't aware of who he was, sarcastically, and he started mispronouncing his name, Sandusky, Santokyo, whatever, and he got to the point where he lost it. Morrell was so frustrated that he confidently said that he could beat Y2J, leading to an impromptu match. This turned out to be a showcase match for Jericho. Santino did put up a fight, but there was no way he was losing. He had the new return boost. He hit the code breaker for the very first time to win it. Later that night, he provided a slight distraction, leading to Orton losing his match to Ric Flair. Now, Y2J's interaction with Santino kind of affected him. He understood that he couldn't get a title shot by using some random pictures, so that's why he cost him his match with Ric Flair. Apparently, he got a text message from WWE.com confirming the match, and this was after Randy Orton accepted the match, so it was official. He was more than confident of his chances, but before he could finish, the WWE champion interrupted. Orton did not see things the way Jericho did, not at all. He accepted the challenge because it provided him an EC match, but the challenger, though, refused to allow Randy to see him as a mere stepping stone. Unlike his opponent, he did his homework. Orton was the most dastardly, conniving wrestler in the entire WWE, and Jericho was more than well aware of this. Despite this, Orton felt confident that he could drop Y2J without breaking a sweat. Since the pay-per-view would be ruined, William Regal put a stop to this and gave each man the chance to choose the other's opponent. Jericho received the noble honor of facing Umaga, whereas Orton earned the right to face Shawn Michaels once again. As you possibly know, Orton was pushed to the very limit facing the Heartbreak Kid at Survivor Series. It took a minuscule mistake that was costly for Orton to retain the title. With that said, the Legend Killer showed his true colors, intruding on Jericho's match and hitting him with that devastating RKO. This attack definitely did not go unnoticed, and by night's end, Chris returned the favor. It had been a while since that other side was unleashed, and obviously that had to do with a damn hiatus, but still. In his pursuit of championship gold, Chris Jericho ran into a familiar friend turned foe, Eric Bischoff. After giving a false prophecy on reinventing this business again, the man of 1004 holds interrupted, and looking back, this moment is a blur. I remember this episode, I remember watching this moment, but at times it feels out of place. I don't know. He acknowledged how Bischoff got rid of him, and it was a blessing in disguise. It led to that passion returning. He also promised to win the title. Bischoff laughed it off and talked about the Save Us slogan, and he said that Jericho should save these fans $40 by forfeiting the match because he was going to lose anyways. He started roasting him and threatening Bischoff scratch that, assault him, and before anything could go down, Randy Orton made the save and instead took the walls himself. Y2J chants intensify as he stares deeply into the title that he never won. Well, technically. Now, throughout the build, they made you believe that there was a chance that Chris Jericho would recapture the gold that eluded him for 5 years, and if you were like me at the time, you believed it. But it was the contrary. The match as a whole was not bad, rather solid. But the thing is, compared to almost every other match in the Age of Orton, it doesn't stand out. That said, the ending has to be the most surprising thing from the title reign. During the match, Randy Orton tossed Chris Jericho into the SmackDown announce table. JBL took the brunt of the fall and took a shove as well. He seemed to have taken this to heart, and meanwhile, Jericho was gaining momentum. He catches Orton and locks him in the walls. He's got the match won. Fans believe it at this point, but then JBL punts him in the face, and they were fuming. Orton added insult to injury afterwards. What this meant was Jericho was kicked out of the main event scene like it was Jazz from the Fresh Prince. It had been a quick run, but according to the Torch and the Wrestling Observer, not everyone was a fan of Y2J's return in promos. Chris Jericho's feud with Randy Orton looks to be a short one, as this should be over soon. He may move on to a War of Words feud with JBL, culminating in a match at WrestleMania. Some people within WWE are already disappointed with Jericho's mic work, in-ring work, and mild crowd reaction. Jericho was never expected to get a long period of grace, but the tide had turned against him fairly quickly. And another one from the Observer dated around December 6, 2007. At the November 19th Raw show, the night in which Chris Jericho returned, Triple H was joking with a number of the younger wrestlers about how they should be really excited for the next round of house shows. When asked why, he said that there would be nothing but sellouts now that the Savior has arrived. He also said something similar to Shawn Michaels, telling him that he should work house shows again because Chris Jericho is back to save wrestling. Michaels didn't really respond to Triple H's comment, as he didn't laugh about it nor respond to it negatively. Of course, Triple H was being sarcastic with his comment. He was telling people that Ric Flair's return will make more money than Jericho's return, and internally, some people believe Triple H's comparison was counterproductive. It was also noted that he never does this sort of stuff at the arena to co-workers, but Jericho, of all people, got him to do it. If he does, it's only with the inner circle of WWE. On the other hand, Stephanie McMahon was given the impression at television that she is very supportive of Chris Jericho. Now, is all this true? I don't know, but at the end of the day, Jericho and the game didn't see eye to eye for a very long time, and that's something they have acknowledged in a couple of interviews in the past. As for JBL, WWE had been asking him to come back for quite some time. They teased his return throughout the year, having him take finishers from the likes of Batista, and he's starting to act tough and rude during interviews. The feud itself was initially supposed to conclude at WrestleMania, and this is something that Jericho himself acknowledged in his book. That said, a somewhat furious and damaged Chris Jericho came out to the ring the following night in order to address JBL's actions at Armageddon. He wanted answers then and there.
Y2J though realized that JBL is not going to meet his demands, but before he could go to SmackDown, Bradshaw emerged via satellite. JBL made himself seem like an extremely busy person who has business to deal with rather than mess with Chris Jericho. He acknowledged Y2J getting burned after touching him last night, but Mr. Save Us though saw it as childish and compared this to Mark Eaton taking a sweet chin music. And Bradshaw exploded, saying he shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence as him, and Jericho promised to appear on SmackDown, but JBL shut him up, saying if he comes Friday night, Chris will not compete in the Royal Rumble. In an effort to reignite that fire within JBL, he told them, what happened to you? You're now being mentioned with the likes of Joey Styles and Michael Cole, and to Jericho, deep down inside, Bradshaw knows that he's irrelevant. The man that he used to be doesn't exist, and when he got the chance to respond, he brought some of that old JBL fury. He told Jericho that may God help him when he comes to Raw, and thus John Bradshaw Layfield's run as a commentator on SmackDown has come to an end. On the Tribute to the Troops show the following week, Y2J faced Randy Orton in a rematch. Once again, in the same situation, JBL comes in and provides a distraction long enough for Orton to bounce him with an RKO. For the first time in a while, JBL demonstrated some of his dangerous moveset, hitting the devastating clothesline from hell. With Mr. Save Us once again back to his natural state as he was in the past, that being taken else to main eventers, his momentum was gone like Carlito's push at the time. Thing is, when the fans first saw Y2J in all his glory returning to his old home, they were hyped, but only 4 weeks later, it's like he never left, and I don't mean that in a good way. For the first time ever, JBL made his Raw debut. Looking back, it's so weird seeing him on Monday nights, and obviously Bradshaw, the Tex and the APA version of JBL, was a Raw wrestler in the past, but his appearances as this businessman were only a handful. JBL, he proceeded to spend WWE's entire pyro budget just raising his hand in the air, and it's so damn tacky, but definitely on brand for JBL, who always treated himself as this grandiose individual. He proclaimed this day as a historic one. Why? Because JBL has come to Raw. Before it could give out a warning to everybody, Chris Jericho came out in a chaotic, bloody brawl ensued. So the feud was in full swing. I don't think anybody foresaw a program with these two, but on paper it had huge potential because both men knew how to talk, and they could sell you on a feud with their words. Whether it be Jericho roasting JBL or Bradshaw himself going on a random tirade about how Y2J saved nobody. Before the feud could intensify, scratch that, they got to the blood chapter rather quick. On the January 7, 2008 episode of Raw, the Raw Roulette episode, Y2J Chris Jericho was scheduled to face both Snitsky and JBL in a handicap match. Jericho for a little while withstood the onslaught, but then Bradshaw brought the weapons. They started choking him out, dragging him with the wire like he's a damn animal all the way up to the stage, where he tied him up for no reason, other than to prove a point, of course. The attack to JBL was symbolic. He took it as an attack to the fans, talking about how he's gonna save them. And he made it personal, asking to talk to Jericho's kids. Come to think about it, I actually forgot this feud started because JBL was pushed away. He wanted Jericho to tell his kids that he's given up and that he's a coward. This also came with a warning, as JBL instructed Chris not to come to the Royal Rumble. Instead of saving the fans, he's gonna need someone to save him. Oh, and there's the pyro. Wait, there's more and more. Bro, we get it, you're rich, you're soaked in money. Oh my god, 5 times! How much pyro does one man need? With that said, Jericho was missing from Raw that night, but he certainly wasn't the following week. Y2J knew very well that JBL wasn't here and thought that the coward statement was ironic. The moment where he was choked out with the cord was something that Jericho had never experienced, but despite this, he was here. Sunday was going to be a fight, and Jericho didn't have to shout, but at the end of the day, he was laser focused on one task, and that was to eradicate JBL. About the match itself, decent, nothing noteworthy, and if anything, the one thing that was noteworthy wasn't the action itself. JBL's intelligence came into play here. Y2J though showed resiliency and determination, even if there was blood on his face. Then he botched a bulldog and the fans booed, and this is edited from the network, I should note. For some reason it's not on there. They chanted, "You effed up," according to Jericho in his book, and there was too much fury coming from him to allow this to continue, so it ended in a DQ. JBL got his in a much intense and violent way compared to what he put Chris Jericho through, but hey, he won by DQ, so it is what it is. Okay, this match in my mind is low-key famous because it was one of the only bloody matches to come in HD. Match itself, as I said, it's nothing. The only reason I remember is because of the blood. Take away the blood, and I don't think I'd even remember a single thing about it. That's what makes this match a bit famous to me, and the action itself, like I said, it's just forgettable. With that said, Jericho was more than happy to discover this newfound side to him. It was clear that this was far from over, and that aggression did not lead to victory for him later that night. Nonetheless, they did eventually face off in a normal match ahead of No Way Out. Solid action, but it lacked that fury that the feud itself delivered. He did this once again in the chamber to basically end the feud on top. Very disappointing. The thing with the matches is, JBL was kind of rusty. Add to that, Jericho had only returned, and I'll get into that later. For now, let's focus on Jericho's story. Following No Way Out, Y2J looked elsewhere. He looked to the Money in the Bank briefcase. He beat Jeff Hardy to qualify for the match, And what this meant was he was in Money in the Bank, and 2, he put his name in contention for Hardy's Intercontinental Championship. He invited Hardy to the highlight reel, and Jericho indirectly rubbed that win into Hardy's face and proclaimed himself to be the victor at WrestleMania. Jeff believed otherwise, so Y2J reminded him that he actually won the title and didn't want to be buddy-buddy with Jeff for the moment. He agreed, and so he hit a twist of fate. As a result of this, Jeff Hardy had to defend the Intercontinental Championship the following week. If you knew, you knew that Hardy got caught at the time. He violated the wellness policy at the worst possible moment. Because of this, he lost the title. Nevertheless, this was a good-ass match. Easily the best for me up to this point. I enjoyed this match a lot watching it a while ago. But I remember really liking it at the time. It was full of counters, exciting action, the crowd was into it, near falls, all that. It ended with Chris Jericho pinning Hardy after a code breaker to become an 8-time champion. Jericho beat his own record. Other than this, though, he got punked out by the Big Show, who was facing the $20 million man, and so it's clear that he had to look good ahead of that match. Y2J disqualified himself and ran into a knockout blow that Big Show developed in his time away. Following this, Jericho failed to win Money in the Bank, and at this point, he was in the same position as he was before leaving in 2005. The problem now is that the momentum that was brought forth with his return was gone. The other men were just doing more notable work around here. His feud with JBL was just on paper, it's supposed to be this big blood feud that ends with Jericho's hand in the air and JBL on the mat, a bloody heap. But it wasn't even close to that. It felt rushed, their matches weren't notable, and it also didn't help that they started the feud at Armageddon. The feud cooled down quickly before the Rumble match. Both men needed somebody else for the moment, and it didn't click, unfortunately. Following that, Jericho was just a good hand. He was featured in the Chamber match, and he was having good performances, but it was clear that they weren't going to push him higher if he continued to be the same person. So we all know what happened in the next couple of months. Alright, as I said, this return, it cooled off quickly. Jericho was just another guy on the roster after a few weeks. But there was some cool moments here. His return promo. I liked the Me Want title match thing. I thought it was kind of funny. But a lot of stuff he did here was mostly forgettable. In the storied history of pro wrestling, many wrestlers have emerged as a viable contender to possibly capture championship gold. Not any title, but the world championship itself. We could go on and ramble about a bunch of them, but today I wanted to talk about possibly the most unfortunate push of the 2000s that ever came to fruition. William Regal's back in 2008. What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. I decided, let's go with something very different today. I wanted to talk about something nobody seems to go into detail with, that being William Regal's push. Now, personal experience, as a young kid back in the late 2000s, I honestly never understood Regal, and I felt that the man was boring, and it took me a couple of years to realize otherwise. If I can assume why I didn't care about him, it's probably because he wasn't flashy or anything like that. Like, he was just a regular old villain to kid me. It wasn't until I began learning about a hell of a lot of wrestling that I started to see William Regal as one of the most underrated wrestlers from the 2000s. Yes, even more underrated than Christian himself. Regal possessed all the qualities to be a dominant main event heel. He had the mic skills, the wrestling skills, the facial expressions, which was something that I really love about him. He really could have been that big heel that challenged for the WWE title, but he wasn't. So what happened? Well, long story short, he failed the wellness policy, but in this video, I'll cover Regal's push as a Raw GM to the suspension that cost him a huge main event push. So where do we start off? Well, how about August 6, 2007? Mr. McMahon made his return after faking his death. That's a whole other story, but the reason why I'm mentioning this is because McMahon wanted to appoint a new general manager for Raw. Not an assistant, but a GM. To say that Coach was underwhelmed with this announcement would be an understatement. McMahon booked a battle royal to determine the new Raw GM, and also the thought of Umaga or Sandman winning this one would have been quite amusing. The ring slowly empties as time goes on, but during the match, Regal disappeared, leaving the Sandman to win it. Unlike nowadays, that spot actually caused some shock, but yeah, William Regal stole it to become the new Raw general manager. Coach was fuming over the result and was demoted to William Regal's assistant. And the new GM quickly took advantage of this by hosting a game show by the name of The Dating Game. He hosted another show called WWE Idol. It's not on the network, by the way, but like I said, Regal's just getting comfortable with his position. Unfortunately, though, since he was a non-wrestler, his stats were shot. From being an 82 overall, I guess, Regal fell to a 49 overall, being unable to defend himself in situations like these. He was the perfect choice to be the Raw general manager because of his mic skills, his stern character, and if they wanted him to wrestle, he can do just that. The run itself heading to the end of the year was simple. Regal was just booking matches, and at this point, he had yet to feature in a major storyline. I mean, the biggest thing he was doing was trying to search for Hornswoggle, that's all. The Raw GM eventually made his in-ring return in December of 2007 when Mr. McMahon randomly booked him in a handicap match to face Triple H. From here on, we'd start to see Regal much more often in the ring, and this was the first time Regal had competed in nearly 5 months. Triple H was like 96 overall at this point, so they stood no chance. Regal, however, was left unfazed, and it was only the beginning of that mini feud. The Raw GM ended up costing the game a spot in the Royal Rumble 2 weeks later, and the reason why he did this was, I assume, because he wanted to make right by Vince, who was very pissed off over a little Hornswoggle incident. This led to a first blood match the following week, which clearly ended with William Regal busted open. It was a very quick yet intense brawl, and it served to be the official beginning of Regal's in-ring return. He ended up losing to Ric Flair in about 2 minutes the following week, but following this, he was back to work. It wasn't until after WrestleMania 24 that Regal slowly turned into a tyrant. Before the official reign of terror went underway, Regal became a babyface for one night only. So the WWE Champion felt that the GM had overstepped his boundaries. This was in light of his title match potentially being a fatal 4-way, and Regal didn't appreciate the comments and so decided to book himself in a match against Randy in London, England. Raw was emanating from there, so there was no way in hell they weren't gonna cheer him. He played it up as the good guy, insulting the likes of JBL and Randy Orton, generating chants for his name, and the match itself saw him put in a very valiant effort. He came out to his old song, and the match itself could have been longer, but what we got was a fine display. Orton healed it up as he does, giving way to the fans clamoring for Regal to make a comeback. He hits a few exploders and knee leaving Orton in critical condition. It was a situation so bad that he had to put his foot on the rope, but unfortunately though, Orton was clutch and he caught Regal with the RKO a few seconds later. Even though Regal's night didn't go the way he intended it to be, the April 21st, 2008 edition of the show proved to be one of his most memorable ones. So if you're not familiar with this, a King of the Ring tournament was scheduled for that night. I don't know why they didn't do a full-on tournament, spread out over several weeks, but they did it anyways. Regal to the announcers wasn't intending to compete, so when he came out, it was a shocker. Not only that, but Hornswoggle was his opponent. He was all worried about this, and Regal went to stealth mode in order to send his opponent into the ring. Regal stared at him as if he was dinner and quickly locked in the stretch to win it. The already injured Finlay tried to save his son, but was kicked in the already injured leg, and ironically or not, he was set to face, you guessed it, William Regal in the semifinal. Finlay was limping coming down to the ring, and being the ring general that he is, William Regal quickly went after that leg. The commentary team thought it was quite unusual of a general manager to insert himself into the King of the Ring, and in the ring, Finlay did have some fight in him, but the Regal stretch caught him dead in his tracks, earning William Regal the win. This meant the Raw general manager was in the final, where he was going to meet CM Punk, Mr. Money in the Bank. Also on a side note, oh my god, did that thing suck. Who in the hell thought to themselves, I want to watch the presidential candidates go at it? Nobody gave a damn. Nobody gives a damn to this day. Regarding the final match, CM Punk had to win through 2 grueling matches with Matt Hardy and the IC champion Chris Jericho, so his body was clearly in the orange state, if he plays SmackDown versus Raw. His body was killing him by the looks of it, whereas Regal was in great condition. It was in for something else though, as Punk was unlike the previous men. He was aggressive with the strikes and knees, and so he quickly targeted the back, trying to wear down CM Punk. Mr. Money in the Bank showed hard fighting out of the hold, delivering massive kicks that completely sent Regal into another world, but his GTS attempt went about as well as his title reign later that year. Regal hits his brutal ass knee before locking in the stretch, forcing Punk to tap out. Oh man, I love that. I just want to see more heels win dominantly like we've seen Roman did earlier this week. Now that Regal was King of the Ring, he took the time to sit on the throne, and damn, it was really looking like the beginning of a supervillain movie or something. Regal, by the looks of it, was fixing to plot some corrupt plans with that look. Despite the fact that Regal was back to being an active wrestler, didn't mean that he was letting go of his position, oh no. As for his plans following King of the Ring, well, this is what I could find. This is a report. I couldn't find exactly who was the one who wrote it, but I'm just gonna mention it anyways. The main person behind William Regal in this recent King of the Ring push is Triple H. He thinks Regal can draw a lot of heat in the King role, and he's been a big fan of his in-ring work. The feeling is that MVP has his US title, CM Punk already has the Money in the Bank, and Jericho has the IC title, so none of them currently need the spot. Originally, the plan was to do the event in the UK, but Regal wouldn't have been able to get over as a heel in his home country. Regal is expected to move into an upper mid-card to main event role as a badass heel, but one thing going against him is the fact that Vince isn't a fan of his in-ring style. Okay. Things were looking very optimistic for one William Regal. On the April 28, 2008 episode of Raw, the coronation of the King of the Ring was held. Regal confirmed that he was remaining the Raw GM and called himself the most powerful entity in the company. The new king was under the belief that the fans were jealous, hence the hate towards him. He told them and the entire roster that they'll have no choice but to respect and fear him. All of a sudden, Mr. Kennedy, of all people, interrupted, and note, Kennedy at this point was a heel, but that would cease to be in a few seconds. He said that while he'd love to congratulate the new king, he couldn't. Kennedy was a bit irritated over the fact that he wasn't in the tournament because he knew very well that the crown would be his. And because of this, he challenged Regal to determine just who's the real King of the Ring. The Raw GM felt completely disrespected by this challenge, saying that he's no common wrestler and if anyone wants to talk to him, they should get an appointment. And then he demanded Kennedy apologize for his statement. He instead said, Regal decides to strike him, and by God, that was a mean-ass strike. It's like he owed him money or something. They brawl, officials separate them, and because of that strike, Kennedy was bleeding. Fast forward to the end of the night, Triple H and Randy Orton are competing in a WWE title main event. Both men went back and forth trying to hit their best shot, when all of a sudden, we see William Regal in the production truck. It was at the worst possible time because Orton was locked in a crossface. Regal didn't appreciate how the fans disrespected him, and so he wanted to take the show off the air. Kevin Dunn clearly snubbed that request, and so William Regal's like, "Take it off the bloody air! Take it off the air now!" And if only he did that every Mondays at 8 o'clock. It was a very, and I mean very, unique way of ending the show. Some didn't like it, but just watching it again, I love it. No other heel authority figure even attempted to do something like this in storyline. Regal had such a thin skin to get offended by the fans that he was going to cut off the feed, potentially risking his job. That's how far he would go to get the fans' respect. Everyone in kayfabe was thinking, oh, he's gonna get punished by the boss. And that's what it was looking like when Mr. McMahon opened up the next Raw episode. He found Regal's actions to be scratch that, revolutionary. Hell, Vince said that Regal reminded him of himself, and the reason why he was even out here was to endorse the Raw general manager. He ends up coming out a few seconds later, and the power-hungry monster proceeded to ask the fans if they got respect, and he threatened to turn off the lights again. The fans chanted, "Regal sucks," and he did just that. He turned off the lights again, and like I said, there was nobody that ever did something like Regal did. He didn't care if the fans can't see it. All he wanted was respect. And again, Mr. Kennedy interrupted. He told the general manager that if he wants respect so much, then maybe he should accept that challenge. Regal countered by booking him in a match against Kane and 13 others, that being the ECW roster. But when the champ heard that Regal refused to be disrespected, he came out. The game sarcastically congratulated the king before giving him some valuable advice, telling Regal not to make mistakes with his position of power. Triple H was pissed over Regal cutting off the feed during his match against Orton and threatened him, stating not to go to war. Because of this, Regal forced him to team up with Kennedy in a 14-on-2 handicap match. That wasn't even it, because later that night, he replaced Jim Ross with a man who had been disrespected for a long time like himself, Mike Adamle. As if that wasn't bad enough, he ruined a good-ass CM Punk and Randy Orton match by turning the lights off, announcing that the match was over. Because of this, Randy Orton was fuming, and while he was okay with last week, this was unacceptable. At the end of the night, Triple H was whooping ass when you guessed it. The lights go out and Orton RKO's the game. And basically, William Regal had such a strong hold over the Raw show, and he refused to be disrespected, simply put. Following week in Detroit, he opens up the show, forcing Lillian Garcia to perform God Save the Queen, generating massive heat in the process. Because of the booing, Regal again reminded them that he's the GM, and he can throw people out if he wants. All of a sudden, he selected two random fans that somehow were related to Mickie James. She tried begging him not to do anything, but he didn't give a damn. Regal sucks chants were loudly heard in the arena, and he was threatening to throw out Mickie as well. Hell, he was willing to strip her of the title, but then 8-bit John Cena made the save. Verbally, of course. Cena knew what Regal was going through, but felt that he was going about it the wrong way. The Raw GM responded with the Mr. McMahon endorsement thing, to which Cena says, "Oh, McMahon? He's crazy." John began listing a bunch of fan complaints, including a certain someone who wrote, "This is bad. This is WCW Thunder bad." Because of these complaints, Regal promised not to turn the lights off, but before he left, John Cena asked Lillian Garcia to perform the song Respect. Later that night, he stuck it to the champ by replacing the ref in his match against Randy Orton with JBL of all people. William Regal's run was really heating up at this point, but it came to a screeching halt, just like the 18-1 Patriots that year. On the May 19, 2008 episode of Raw, William Regal once again came out to massive heat from the crowd in order to announce a few matches for One Night Stand. Suddenly, Mr. Kennedy, who had been bugging the Raw GM, interrupts, and again, he asked for a one-on-one matchup tonight. In order to assert his authority, Regal's ready to fire whoever came out then and there. That same ended up being rescinded because the boss was the one who came out. Kennedy was asking for Vince to fire Regal, but he quickly shut him up. And moving on to other topics, while McMahon did give Regal his endorsement, since then the company has received more viewer complaints than ever before. While he didn't give a damn what the fans thought, it was hurting his pockets, you know. The money and the TV ratings were going down in kayfabe. Since both men want each other gone, he booked a loser leaves WWE match. That match goes down. Kennedy was pretty damn over, and shockingly enough, Regal lost. This was despite the fact that he made the match no DQ. After the match, the fans serenaded him with a goodbye song, and in the back, he tries to enter his office only to discover Teddy Long was in there. Some felt that this was going to lead to the Regal and Triple H battle, but the next day on May 20th, 2008, WWE.com revealed that William Regal had been suspended for 60 days for violating the wellness policy. ProWrestling.net reported that Regal was completely disappointed in himself for ruining his big push, as he knew that opportunities don't come along like that. Add to that, it was the second time Regal was suspended for the wellness policy. According to the Wrestling Observer, Regal claimed it was a mistake. Here's what they had to say. It is well known that William Regal has had problems with recreational drugs in the past, ultimately losing his job 2 times over, early 1998 from WCW and April 1999 from WWE, as well as a stint in rehab. However, he has long since claimed to be clean. No one has ever said anything on Regal struggling to maintain his sobriety, so that the theory of him failing a drug test due to recreational drugs appears to be out. Regal's been telling people that he believes he took an illegal supplement by accident, which led to his drug failure. However, a number of people are skeptical of that, mostly because so many athletes have used that excuse in the past and it's rarely believed. While it may not necessarily be true, the belief backstage among a few people in WWE is that Regal started taking steroids again somewhat recently due to his recent push after winning the King of the Ring tournament. Considering that he was pushed as an active wrestler and not just a suited up authority figure, the feeling is that he needed to get back on the gas to look his absolute best. Aw man, it's a damn shame. I honestly feel that had Regal never gotten suspended, he could have gone all the way. While there was doubts over McMahon fully believing in him initially, it's possible that the heat he was generating could have changed his mind. The one thing that was stopping him was the wrestling style in my eyes. Triple H was backing him. Had Regal never gotten suspended, a bunch of things would have been different. For one, it's unknown if Jericho HBK would have feuded for the title. Triple H may have never gone to SmackDown. If he never gotten suspended, I think he would have used his position of power to make himself the world champion, then get a faction, and heels and faces alike would hate him. I think it could have been a good storyline and could have established William Regal as a main event talent. It's just a damn shame that it never came to fruition because of the whole wellness policy thing, but had it did, like I said, I think Regal would have been the WWE champion. It's just something that I feel would have happened. But yeah. Umaga recaptured the Intercontinental Championship and became a dominant opponent. The thing is, without Estrada, a lot changed. You were never going to understand Umaga's intentions or anything like that, but on the other side, it added to his monster character. He would just come out and destroy his opponent's title or no title. I always loved how he came out with the title like it was nothing in his mouth and just caused chaos. It's like a you wanna come get it type situation. He went through Jeff Hardy, Santino, but then on one particular night, Randy Orton and Carlito got in his business and started slapping his tits, telling him to get involved. He looked super menacing this time around, and for the first time in his career, he wasn't a heel anymore. This man wrestled with more intensity and brought more excitement with his turn. He was really something else. Unfortunately, though, it didn't last long, and after violating the wellness policy, he lost the IC title to Jeff Hardy after assaulting him the previous week. The commentary shocked as if they'd seen Umaga dancing around his entire career once he turned heel again. Now that he lost the title, he had to begin a feud with Triple H. Around this time period, Triple H was super strong. He had just returned, and I must say he was like a 98 overall, and that's no exaggeration. He whooped Umaga's ass and left him a bloody heap, and not even John Cena destroyed him like this. This was done because he had to go away due to the wellness policy violation, so let's fast forward a month. On the October 1st, 2007 episode of Raw, Umaga made his return. He went after these jobbers and demonstrated what he was capable of. Mr. McMahon hated Triple H, and as William Regal calls him, Umaga was his best choice at taking them out. He tried to do just that later that night, and while he was close to succeeding, Carlito ruined everything and the game brought out the sledgehammer, leading to Umaga looking at it confused as if he saw the result of their No Mercy match. About that one, initially it was supposed to be a normal match, but after Triple H won the title, it was made a title match. The problem with this one is because Triple H had to wrestle 3 matches, the time was significantly cut off, and add to that, it wasn't exactly a match that Umaga could win because it was for the title. Luckily for Umaga, he regained some heat the next night when he did the same thing Triple H did to him. This led to a match for Cyber Sunday, but before that could go down, Triple H returned on the final episode, and this turned into one of those security brawls. You know it's serious when Triple H is wearing jeans and elbow pads. He was more than hungry for a fight. They're trying to separate them, but he couldn't give a damn. Umaga's being pushed away, he dives onto him, and this showed just how intense and violent the feud was. Good build. I liked how things between them were 100% violent. They never let go and it made for some good brawls. At times though, it felt more like Triple H versus Mr. McMahon featuring Umaga. The choice for the match ended up being a street fight, and about this one, it fit the feud properly. Within minutes, they're out here breaking walls. Triple H made his chances seem slim as he was selling everything Umaga did like it was the end of the match. Umaga dominated and threw the game around for the majority of the match. He was treated like the monster that he was, and even when Triple H won it, which was obvious, he barely did it. All it took was one moment to capitalize. As for the result, Triple H was clearly pegged to challenge for the title, so him losing was highly unlikely. And it's not like he could have afforded to lose, because could he? Yeah, he's Triple H. He was the #1 babyface on Raw at the time. It would have been something for Umaga, but it is what it is. The feud slowly fizzled and transitioned into a Jeff Hardy versus Triple H thing, and Umaga, on the other hand, was just there. He was destroying jobbers and mid-carders, but the moment he wrestles somebody like Jeff Hardy, it's a different story. That said, he had some great performances, such as the Elimination Chamber match, where he was dropping Chris Jericho, Hardy, Triple H, and
and like 3 of these men had to gang up on him and hit their finishers in order to eliminate him. It was nice. WrestleMania 24 was on the horizon, and every year was an interpromotional match. William Regal felt it was best for Umaga, or as he says, Umanga, to represent Raw. SmackDown though had Batista. Looking at this segment, Regal could have been a manager of his in a different time period, but that's not the point. Batista was here, but not only that, but he was wearing his almost unstoppable gear. The tank top, the jeans, and of course, the Timbs. And I've said this before, but Timbs Batista is built different. He was dominated initially, but the animal rebounded and dropped Umaga with the spine buster. Because he was embarrassed, the Samoan Bulldozer was out to do the same thing, except this time, he cost Batista's match with MVP. Of course, Batista doesn't like this, so he goes after him on the final Raw before WrestleMania. Damn, spear looked intense though. And WrestleMania 24's vibe is untouchable. With that said, this match just happened. There's a reason why you don't hear about it that often. Batista, of course, sold his throat well. It was mostly isolated, but when it came time for the comeback, that was it. Batista won it. At this point, Umaga wasn't doing much. He was around as a guy who put over the main eventers. He was booked pretty strong, but when it came to significant victories, he didn't have many at the time. His feud with Jeff Hardy was just him dominating Hardy and throwing him around like nothing, and Hardy manages to find a way to win in the end. That's what happened here, and that's what happened at One Night Stand. Nice matches though, especially the False Count Anywhere match. It truly captures Hardy's craziness and connection with the crowd. Lashley, to me as a kid, was like one of the very top wrestlers out there. There was 3 guys that were pushing as the new baby faces. It was John Cena, Batista, and Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley was the number 3 guy. He wasn't the number 3 guy in general at this point, but what I'm just saying is that he was number 3 in terms of rising stars. The other 2 were established, but he was next up. That was what it looked like at the time. So yeah, Lashley got another rematch at One Night Stand. This time around, he managed to figure things out, and through all of it, emerged as champion and sent McMahon into a state of depression. This title reign didn't even last long because Lashley was drafted to Raw. Now, with regards to this McMahon feud, it was all about elevating Bobby Lashley at the time. He was always trying to make him look like a big star, always try to like elevate him to the highest level alongside the likes of Batista and John Cena. In some ways it worked, in others it didn't, obviously. Personally speaking, I actually did see Lashley as a main event talent as a kid. I thought he was one of the bigger talents, as evident by the fact that he was on the SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 cover, and the fact that he was feuding with the likes of John Cena, Vince McMahon, all these top talents. So it felt like it was only a matter of time before he'd win the world championship. At the time, they didn't book champions to lose, so they stripped him of the title. This was a move that was expected to go well for him because WWE made him look very strong throughout the year, so by default, he was the number 2 babyface on the show at the time. It was clear that the company wanted him to feud with John Cena. It was one of the biggest matches they could do. It was a face versus face match with great potential. Lashley still wasn't the best at the time, but he was starting to be more capable of holding his own. He started calling himself the uncrowned champion on Raw. He was basically saying, I'm champion before becoming champion. The first interaction between them was hyped at Vengeance Night of Champions, a great match that also teased what's to come between Cena and Lashley. This was fast-paced and one of the more enjoyable matches from this time period. It never gets dull and lasts only 10 minutes, which makes every second a memorable one. Following Vengeance, Bobby Lashley won a Beat the Clock Challenge tournament to win the right to face John Cena at the Great American Bash. John Cena was in midst a 10-month title reign up to this point. He'd faced everyone that gone through him, but other than Shawn Michaels, this was basically his toughest challenge in storyline. That's what it was. The hype for this match was big for me personally. I remember being very interested in seeing Cena and Lashley because of the fact that, you know, 2 babyfaces colliding, top talent, all that. The company themselves were trying to sell it as a huge fight without the need for having some dramatic personal story, whatever. It's just about the talent, the skill, and all that. They had a lot of wrestlers being interviewed, giving their thoughts about the match. They were being separated in the segments with the security trying to push them away. It was good. It was a good build. It was a good build, and it's exactly what they should have done with it, you know, because Lashley isn't the best talker. Obviously, did speak here as always. It was limited in a ways like, I'm gonna kick your ass, this and that. It made sense. Their match at the Bash was pretty damn good. Hell, I'd say it was great. It was Bobby Lashley's very best match in WWE. John Cena pushed him to the very limit. He brought the very best in him. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, hey, what if Bobby Lashley actually remained and learned more about the company, about the in-ring stuff? How good would he have been? Like, it makes you question that, because here, he showed shades of that, and it was his most promising performance yet. Cena has always retained the title, but he did it in a huge way, and it's a match that I really look back on fondly. It was that damn good. I remember watching it a while back, enjoying it. Following this, Lashley unfortunately got injured. He tore his shoulder, which meant he had to be sidelined for several months. He missed SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and the Royal Rumble. Surprisingly, he was released in February of 2008. This came as a surprise to many because of the fact that Lashley was being pushed as a hard talent and all that, but it all comes down to a couple of things. For one, he wasn't happy with Michael Hayes. He was feuding with him. He had a lot of issues with him at the time.
Not to mention the WrestleMania payout was disappointing too. In January 2008, Lashley said, and I quote, "I can't go into details of this now, but like I said before, sometimes people will hate you personally, try to destroy you, which has happened here. Evil has prevailed. However, like I said before, if you continue your struggle, doors will open around these people." This was apparently, keyword apparently, about Michael Hayes. There was a lot of issues between them at the time, and it's heavily rumored that one of the reasons why Lashley even went to ECW in 2006 is because of Michael Hayes. Lashley himself went into detail about this. He claims a part of it was him going to fight. He wanted to go to Bellator and stuff like that. He trained, all that. Jim Ross says it was about Bobby Lashley's payout at WrestleMania 23. Apparently, it was a little less than he thought. It was a little less than he anticipated. Seeing as he was a major part of the show, it kind of makes sense for him to get paid a little more, but if the number was true, apparently he got paid around $400,000 or $500,000, and he thought that he wanted a little more. It is what it is, of course, but it's a very strange thing. It's kind of blurry the way things went. And if you're like, why is it blurry? The reason why I say it's blurry is because Bobby Lashley was a big talent, you know, even though he was not that like amazing in ring and all that, they still invested a lot in him, and he wasn't in a position where he actually failed and they gave up on him. It wasn't that at all. It was just he went out with an injury and was upset, you know. He wasn't even released because they wanted to release him. He wanted to release himself. The whole thing's bizarre, you know, because Crystal Marshall at the time left the company. Lashley, rumor has it, followed her. He wasn't happy about how they were treating her. She was having heat. She had heat. But then again, as I say, who the hell didn't have heat in 2000s WWE? Nobody. So it's a weird thing, but it also brought an ending to Bobby Lashley's first run in WWE, which is unfortunate, of course. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, hey, what could have been?
This feud on paper, especially back in 2007, I assume you're optimistic about it. Because on one side, you had an all-time performer, a man that was more reliable than Bret Favre in the snow, at least a part of his career, HBK. His 2008 is never spoken about as much as others, and I will say this, he was low-key the most consistent wrestler on the roster. I can't say that about anyone else. Mr. Kennedy, on the other hand, if we look at him from that time, there was high hopes. You know, good talker, has charisma, and he would have had his moment with the title, but it was pried away from him because of an injury and unlucky circumstances. The trajectory of his career would certainly be different had he never gotten that injury, but that's like saying Sin Cara would have been a WWE legend had things went his way. With regards to this feud, I feel the biggest problem with it is not the matches, no. For a shocker, they didn't talk enough. Is my claim true? Well, let's find out. On November 19th, 2007 episode of Raw, Shawn Michaels kicked off the show and tried his best to get a rematch with Randy Orton. Frying Pan Face, as Y2J called him, was not interested in a rematch with a man he had already beaten. Out of everyone to appear, Mr. Kennedy was here. The look on his face was like HBK politicked against him or something. And this was also an image nobody had seen before. Like Mr. Kennedy and HBK in the same ring at the same time. Michaels didn't wait for long and opted to assault Kennedy. They brawled and this pissed off Michaels so much to the point where he wanted a match. Seconds later, Mr. Kennedy made it apparent as to why he had such a huge issue with Michaels. It's because of the showstopper moniker. It's not like Kennedy didn't praise him for his talents, but to him, at the end of the day, Shawn chokes when it matters the most. Regal clearly wanted something to go down between them, and it seemed like the match was imminent, and after the commercial break, both men continued where they left off. Unlike movie sequels, this brawl is much better than the first one. Michaels came out the victor after Kennedy's mistake of putting up a chair. He furiously whined about how he was out there to show respect, and his story is missing about 98% of any context. He had this ferocious look on his face, and he was claiming that HBK wished he had his talent. He's talking about how he's held down but promised otherwise. He's like, Father Time catches up with everybody. The following week, Kennedy decided to have fun. He indirectly promoted Shawn Michaels' DVD. Technically, he was shilling like HBK paid him to do it, but Kennedy intended to do something else. He said that the DVD contains HBK backstabbing his partners, taking L's when it matters the most, and the best part was when he mentioned the whole smile thing. Kennedy also said that the DVD featured Michaels as politicking. He also said that the worst was yet to come for HBK because he's stepping in the ring with him. And you know how it goes. Does it go out for the Heartbreak Kid to respond? Matter of fact, Kennedy, of all people, had to call him out on this. The man didn't appreciate Michaels overlooking his match at Armageddon. Yeah, the match was confirmed at the time. And he told him to keep his eyes on the screen because Kennedy was ready to deliver a blast from the past. What was this? Well, the loudmouth introduced three men. First up was Marty Jannetty. Well, the $1 version of him. The cheap version of Razor Ramon. It kind of looks like a buff Sean William Scott to me doing a Razor impression. Maybe it's my eyes. I don't know. And third, of course, was Diesel. Once again, the goatee makes him look like somebody else, and Kennedy didn't show much respect to these guys and left the best for last. Shawn Michaels. Kennedy asked about their thoughts on HBK, and they called him egotistical, a chump and a traitor. Kennedy himself called Michaels the L word, which is loser. He also said that after Armageddon, Michaels might need to consider another profession. He interrupted and easily kicked all of them before teasing Kennedy. Michaels' Shawn, on the other hand, opted to run the hell out of there. Later that night, Kennedy made a run-in during Michaels' match, leading to yet another brawl. Ahead of Armageddon, Kennedy faced the real Marty Jannetty. Oh, and that's the only fan from this generation who went crazy upon seeing him. The match itself was pretty competitive. He got more offense in than you'd expect, but obviously lost. Afterwards, Michaels brought the fight and sent his pay-per-view opponent running for all of 2 seconds because Kennedy tried to capitalize on the distracted showstopper. Out of all the people to appear, Triple H made the distraction, leading to a little DX reunion, which was the first time in about a month that they reunited. With all of that occurring, the build was complete. From my perspective, and with everything we know now, it was clearly the start. It's not like this was a one and done thing, and it was obvious that it was evolving into something else. Their Armageddon match wasn't must-watch or anything like that, however, it was solid. Dare I say it was even good. Before the match, Kennedy said that the only thing that matters is that he beats Michaels. The Heartbreak Kid initially was poised to do something to the left arm of the young upstart. Slowly, his hand in particular is being dissected. The opponent's opening came at a moment's notice when Michaels was tossed into the post. Similar to his approach, Kennedy went in the direction of focusing on the lower back. It was textbook wrestling psychology. Both men were beaten and battered in one particular area, especially Michaels, but that didn't stop him from finding a burst of momentum in order to drop Kennedy and connect with the elbow. The action started going back and forth with neither man letting go, and Kennedy's huge moment came with a Green Bay plunge, but it wasn't enough for the three. The ending itself did make Kennedy look strong as it went like this. He was doing work on HBK, but his hand got the best of him, and from out of nowhere, Shawn Michaels connected with a sweet chin music. 1, 2, 3, good match. It's a clutch performance and storyline for HBK and also made things a bit more open for their next match. They faced off in a tag team match before having the sequel to their Armageddon bout on the final Raw of 2007. Michaels was again the opportunistic psychologist as previously, and this time it was the left knee. There was a tackle similar in Armageddon, and Kennedy's all over Michaels. He was quick and relentless on the attack, and he refused to allow Michaels a moment to properly regain his composure. Same stuff as Armageddon, with Kennedy focused on the lower back, and I should note that he had vowed to beat Shawn Michaels before the year concluded. This time, the man was right. He evaded sweet chin music and hit the mic check for the 1, 2, 3, and it was a victory that was cleaner than an 80s babyface. What's funny is that there were loads of reports at the time how he was de-pushed because of the whole Fox interview on steroids, and so that contradicts whatever the talk was at the time, although maybe, just maybe, it did play a part in them releasing him because, you know, he wasn't well liked backstage. But in this moment of time, December 31st, 2007, he had beaten Shawn Michaels clean, and it was one of the biggest victories of his career. The match itself wasn't as good as Armageddon, in my opinion. I prefer their first match because it felt much more fresh. And here, I can notice that they did a lot of similar stuff compared to that match. As a result of the score being 1-1, Kennedy and HBK were set to face off in the tiebreaker. Before the match could begin, Mr. McMahon interrupted and spun the wheel, and it landed on strange bedfellows, meaning, can they coexist? Their opponents were so damn random. It was Charlie Haas and Trevor Murdoch. That just sounds like a main event feud in NWA. Charlie was weird here. Michaels and Kennedy were petty with one another, and best of all was when HBK had the match won, but Kennedy opted to hit the mic check and take the victory for himself. He said some random stuff here. I assume he said, Brett's better than you. I don't know. And despite the Royal Rumble on his mind, Michaels still wanted to end things with Kennedy and was even ready to have it be for a Royal Rumble spot. The reason why Kennedy didn't appear here was because he was getting married. He did appear nonetheless via satellite to say that Michaels couldn't accept an L. He said that he couldn't accept that his time passed, but nonetheless, he accepted HBK's challenge, citing it as a warm-up match for the Royal Rumble. One thing to note about this match is the fact that it was the first one in the HD era. Kennedy showed some disrespect tossing the shirt at HBK, who thought this was Montreal and did that little thing. This one, in comparison to the others, did feel a bit different. There wasn't the isolation, it was just two men beating the hell out of each other. The action was fast and furious with huge moves and huge near falls, and HBK once again tried stealing it from out of nowhere. While his first try was unsuccessful, he hit it the second time to end the feud on top, 2-1. Kennedy, though, would have the last laugh at the Royal Rumble by eliminating Michaels, and you'd think, oh, the feud's going to continue. But it didn't. It did not continue following this. They just went their separate ways. Michaels went on to the Elimination Chamber, whereas Kennedy feuded with Ric Flair. Looking back on this feud, it was honestly there. The matches were good enough, but the problem lied in the fact that the feud lacked any intensity. Other than the fact that Kennedy was calling HBK a loser, they didn't do more with the story. Like, you'd expect more promos and interactions, and to have the story intensify, but that didn't happen. It definitely should have been better than it was. I mean, the feud ended on Raw with the match opening the show. It goes to show just how much effort was put into it, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but I'd give it a 6 out of 10 alone for the matches. They were good. They had some storytelling, but the huge gap in this story is the promos. Michaels never seemed to respond to Kennedy's claims during the entirety of the feud. I don't really remember much talking, which is a shocker because this was the era full of loudmouths and less wrestling matches. I would add more here, but that's all there is to say about the feud. It did not do much for Kennedy in the long run, although it's cool that he beat Shawn Michaels clean. It's one thing to mention. We don't know how his run would have went had he never got injured following this. He got injured twice. But HBK, on the other hand, had one hell of a 2008. His 2008 was very, very, very good. Simple as that. Around the mid-2000s, WWE placed their main focus on establishing John Cena as a top star. They had succeeded initially because he was well liked by the crowd and had the main event quality charisma. And sure, some of the fans turned on him as time went on, but 2007 was when he really brought it, and many consider it to be his best year. He had program after program, good to great matches, and some of these matches we still talk about to this very day. His title reign was historic, and up to that point, it had been nearly 20 years since somebody held the title for that long, and whoever was going to beat him was going to have the most momentum out of anyone in the company, but he suffered a torn pectoral muscle and was sidelined for several months. Cena at the time was expected to miss WrestleMania, and so plans were in motion for others, such as Randy Orton and Triple H, to face off, but in a twist of fate, there was a different plan in store. At the Royal Rumble in Madison Square Garden, you had an all-star lineup of talent vying for the chance to make it to the main event of WrestleMania. At the time, I assume everyone thought Triple H was winning it. It made sense. He was slowly gaining momentum. He destroyed Umaga, Carlito, and it just made sense because he was the biggest babyface on Raw. Chaos is unfolding in the ring. Triple H hits a pedigree on Umaga, and it's time for number 30. You hear that familiar music, the commentary's confused, and by God, it's John Cena. Madison Square Garden erupted. They went insane because this man was out for 3.5 months. Nobody expected him to be back so soon. And any other person, they'll be out until the summer, but John Cena's built different. Triple H couldn't or refused to believe it, and before they could brawl, Mark Henry ruined everything. He pays the price, as do a bunch of the guys in the ring, and before you do it, John Cena and Triple H are brawling in a clash nobody expected. At least nobody expected that night. It's a special moment, an insane turn of events. As expected, John Cena emerged victorious and won the right to challenge for the title he never lost. Personal experience, I didn't watch the Rumble live. For some reason, I didn't check the results the next day either, but instead I watched Raw, so I had no idea. The moment I saw Cena, I just wanted him to win. I didn't know what actually happened, so seeing him as the victor was really exciting. He was my favorite wrestler by far, and those 4 months with him gone felt much longer. The next night on Raw, John Cena addressed his return at the Rumble. Even though he was back, some of the fans were back to booing him. He talked about how he was out with a torn pectoral. They still booed, but he was happy. He was happy to hear them booing. The doctors informed him that he was out for 12 months, and even though it was a struggle, he realized that it was definitely going to miss WrestleMania. At least that's what he thought initially. So instead of taking the doctor's word for it, he took a risk and aimed to be back before WrestleMania, and here he was. It was impossible, but he made it possible, and now he's going to WrestleMania. Mixed crowd reaction, and instead of waiting until the event, Cena thought, why not tonight? So basically, since he was the challenge for the title, he wanted the match tonight. The crowd goes crazy because a title match is a title match, and he asked a question. So Randy Orton came out. He didn't dance around the question and straight up told him that he isn't going to defend the title tonight. Why? Orton went on about his previous challengers and how he beat them, and Cena acknowledged this and also acknowledged that Orton was the one who took him out. Cena brought out his disadvantage in order to goad Orton into accepting the match. It was a smart tactic because, as Cena said, by WrestleMania he'll be healed up. However, Orton was smarter now. Like, why would he defend the title on Raw? The fans aren't going to be paying for it, and he sure as hell won't benefit. So he turned down the match instead for the next pay-per-view. No Way Out. Cena won the match, and it was on. However, he still held resentment over Orton taking all this away from him and promised something for tonight. About that, yeah, Cena was ready for a fight. He dropped Orton with ease and sent a message ahead of February 17th. In an effort to shut Cena up and prevent a Mbappe and Real Madrid situation, Orton wanted Cena to sign the contract for the match at No Way Out. The thing is, either way for Orton, he was good. If he was too scared, well, he holds the title longer without defending it. Turns out he was more than eager to make this match official. Orton let him know, hey, the match is still on at No Way Out, even if Mark Henry tears that pectoral muscle, and there he is. The little distraction is more than enough for Orton to drop him with the RKO. The momentum was clearly on Henry's side for the arm wrestling match, and it also didn't help that Henry attacked his arm, but John Cena's built different. We said this once, we'll say it again. Just as he's gonna drop Henry, he's gonna win the arm wrestling match. It was revealed to be a setup. The attack backfired and Henry took an FU. So basically, it had seemed like Randy Orton underestimated Cena greatly. He was back. He didn't lose a step, and it showed here. It also showed in the match against Mark Henry, and it spelled disaster for Orton at No Way Out. Cena knew this was his to win because Orton was now the hunted. For him, there's no excuses. He's now 100%, but for Orton, though, there's no way out. The former champion was in form. He looked almost unstoppable, and in storyline, Orton knew this. About the match, I somewhat underrated it in the past. I knew it was decent, but after watching it for that No Way Out 2008 review, I liked it more. It grew on me. The atmosphere for the match was nice. The action was decent, and it was on its way to becoming something good. As John Cena is gaining momentum, Orton realizes he's got no chance of winning this match. Cena had this look on his face like, is that all you got? And so he slaps the hell out of the referee to retain the title by disqualification. He has a smile on his face like he actually accomplished something. The match is over, and John Cena's title shot is gone. So what does he do? He retaliates with the FU and the STFU. He taps out Orton, but the match was over. What is he going to do? Cena whoops his ass, but he's got no title. For Orton, he had yet to focus on Triple H now, but the Royal Rumble winner still wanted a rematch. Triple H, though, didn't give a damn. If Cena beats Orton or vice versa, he's going to be champion at WrestleMania. William Regal, though, ruined everything. He made a match between Orton and Cena for the main event, and if Cena wins, he's added to the match at WrestleMania. The game was annoyed by this, but he was made the special referee. Even though the situation didn't benefit him, Triple H counted Orton's shoulders down the mat, making it a triple threat match. He then congratulated Cena with the pedigree before dropping Orton as well and giving everyone a preview of what's to come. Cena was not that happy about this, but at the same time, he was thankful of Triple H not disqualifying him. He was still annoyed about that pedigree though, don't take that away. Triple H admitted that he let Cena win because he wants him in the match at WrestleMania. Cena of course had to talk about WrestleMania 22 and how Triple H tapped out. At the same time, Randy Orton reminded him that he was here and told him that it doesn't matter what happens, he's the WWE champion. The man even took a jab at Cena and told him the champ is here and that there's nothing they can do about it. They put it to the test and brawled, and for Randy Orton, this provided him a huge opportunity to capitalize, and that's what he did here. The tensions between John Cena and Triple H was still there at the end of the show. Both men were hungry and craving a fight, but Cena, though, left his eyes off Kennedy, who gave him the mic check. With WrestleMania 4 weeks away, William Regal wanted some drama, so he's given each man a night to run the show. Orton was pissed and tried to deal with the other, saying they should have the night off when the other takes over. He's like, oh, look out for me, I'll look out for you. Since Cena was first, he made Triple H and Randy Orton face off in the main event. As expected, it ended in high drama with each man getting at one another, either intentionally or unintentionally. The man who seemed unlikely to stand on top was the one who was left unscathed. Orton's night was next, and instantly he was out for blood. He made Triple H face Kane, and for John Cena, he faced one of the only men that decisively beat him in the last 2 years, Shawn Michaels. Both men fell like hell. They had to face their previous WrestleMania points, but for Triple H, it was only going to get better. Why? Well, instead of doing the same thing, running Raw and having those two face off, he wanted Cena and Orton as a tag team against the entire Raw roster. Just saying it sounds ridiculous, but it was going to be a 17-on-2 tag team match. For their sake, they had to coexist. Even then, Orton wanted Cena to lay down and lose the match for them, and he wouldn't do it because he's a champion. Cena got angry, talking about how they'll fight like men, but Triple H informed them that it's elimination rules. Now, John Cena and Randy Orton were basically 97, 96 overall at the time. Half of the guys were not even in their league. Trevor Murdoch, easy. Lance Cade, like nothing. Cody Rhodes, no problem. And at some points, they properly integrated into the match and worked like a tag team. And watching this match makes me sad there isn't a John Cena and Randy Orton tag team. As expected, the match went south and it ended by DQ. It was so damn chaotic, and to top it all off, Triple H came in and hit the pedigree on both of them. With regards to the match at WrestleMania, good. It's a highlight from the show easily. Is it match of the night? No, but it complements the rest of the show. John Cena had a marching band entrance, which for some reason doesn't stand out compared to his other WrestleMania entrances. The results of the match wasn't set in stone, although I assume most thought Triple H would win. John Cena had an advantage as well, but I doubt anybody thought Orton was winning. The match itself, it just clicked. The atmosphere, the lighting was unique, I loved it. The action was very pleasant, and it certainly doesn't overstay its welcome. As a kid, I thought John Cena was winning. Why? Because other than being John Cena, he was undefeated at WrestleMania, and at the time, I couldn't fathom Cena losing at the show of shows. Not only did that happen, but he took the pinfall as well. I was flabbergasted like my name was Luka Doncic last week, but seriously, looking back at it, it's almost surprising that he did take the pinfall. Obviously, Triple H was the next champion, but this was the face of the company, the guy they were pushing the most. Regardless, either way, this was one of Randy Orton's most special nights. He emerged from the situation as the champion when almost nobody expected him to. I know I didn't. Now, following WrestleMania, John Cena still complained and wanted a title match. Problem was, JBL and Triple H wanted one as well. JBL and Triple H, though, managed to get into the match, and so John Cena was like, why don't we make it a fatal 4-way? Regal was enticed, but he needed Cena to prove that he truly wants it. And how's he going to do that? Well, it's got to be both JBL and Triple H in a handicap match. Now, these two hate each other, but they also hate John Cena, and JBL tried to rest his case to form a partnership. Unfortunately for him, it fell on deaf ears. If anything, they imploded, and even Randy Orton was affected. So he tried to return the favor. In doing so, he basically handed the title opportunity to John Cena. Triple H couldn't give a damn, and it was officially a fatal 4-way. Of course, JBL had a problem with this. He was extremely frustrated with his title shot turning into a fatal 4-way. But the problem with this, though, was the fact that Regal was in London. He was in his home country and stood up to the evil wannabe tyrant. Even then, JBL turned a negative, that being a match with Triple H, into a positive and teased what's to come. Ahead of Backlash, John Cena gave his final words. He said that each man has their claim to the title, but him, he's gonna make them earn it. Why? Because he's ready to bring the thunder. I mean, even Cena knew he was losing by the sounds of this promo. That doesn't mean he lacked momentum. It's just others such as JBL and Triple H shined brighter.
The match at Backlash is not exactly a gem. I'd say it's decent though. The match was basically Triple H's crowning moment, but it also provided John Cena his next feud, JBL. During the match, JBL found himself in the STFU. He tapped out and Cena ended up taking a punt later to be eliminated. As expected, Triple H eventually won the title. The next night on Raw, frustrated JBL destroyed Robbie McAllister and told the commentary team that this should have been John Cena. He took away what he wanted most and now he's ready to destroy him. Soon enough, the match was confirmed. It was going to be John Cena and JBL at Judgment Day. As the weeks went by, Bradshaw was still upset with his title opportunity being taken away and was going to destroy anyone in sight. The build for the match was pretty dry, and this had to do with John Cena's movie commitments. He was busy with 12 rounds. But they did have one last confrontation on the Raw before Judgment Day. After pissing off William Regal, JBL was made the special referee for John Cena's match with Randy Orton. As if Cena could give a damn. This only caused him to be screwed over and, of course, attacked. Triple H had to make the save, leading to an all-out brawl. The one thing that's shocking about their match at Judgment Day was the fact that they opened the show. John Cena never opened the show in this era. It's weird. But as for how this went, there's a reason why this match isn't talked about often. It was just average. JBL seemed to have the match won, but John Cena pulled a John Cena. Nonetheless, this was far from over, and it was clear that Cena barely won, and JBL was greatly affected by this. At this point, JBL felt that John Cena being in his way ruins his chances of winning the WWE title. So he challenged Cena to a first blood match at One Night Stand. This one was way better than the Judgment Day match. That's not me over-exaggerating the quality, because it's just decent. Nothing special. For John Cena though, he finally bounced back in a huge way. He was winning some matches around here, but he didn't win them with authority like he did with this one. This was the most intensity Cena showed in months. Another thing that WWE was doing around this time was teasing John Cena and Mickie James. For some reason, they were often around each other, and it was never outright stated they were together, but it was clear what the intention was. With One Night Stand behind him, John Cena felt it was time to re-enter the title picture. Cena's reasoning for a title shot was simple. You never beat me. So he asked the game if he was ready, and if you watched WWE in early 2008, you know that Triple H was irritated with how John Cena beat him 2 years earlier. Problem was, Jeff Hardy wanted some as well, and similar to Triple H and Cena, he won a match as well at One Night Stand. It was clear what Hardy wanted, and Triple H refused to get in the way. All he wanted was a challenger, it's as simple as that. So Hardy wanted a match with John Cena, winner faces Triple H. Mr. McMahon made it seem like it was his idea, and the match was official. How did this match happen only once? I don't know, it just seems like one of the biggest matches they could have done at the time. Maybe it's because Hardy left, I don't know. This one, it's easily a hitting gem, even if it wasn't going to be good. Just the sight of Jeff Hardy and John Cena would have been good enough for you to view it. During the match, a fan randomly ran in. The crowd was hot for this one, and I just wish this happened again a year later. It was John Cena who stood tall here to win the right to face Triple H. The game quickly came out to remind Cena what's in store at Night of Champions, and both men were extremely confident of their chances at the event. For John Cena, he's already proven he could beat Triple H. Winning the title is no problem. For Triple H, he's changed a lot in 2 years. Holding that title proves he's the best, and Cena's got to come to terms with that. Sure, WrestleMania 22 happened, but that was then, and this is now. JBL, meanwhile, was almost hell-bent on ruining Cena's day with the game. His match with the challenger was observed by the champion, and this almost hurt Cena. Beating JBL was a struggle, but Cena barely did it. Even though the match was 3 weeks away, this didn't stop Triple H from being petty. He dropped Cena off the announce table ahead of his match with Jeff Hardy. Cena then took this as an opportunity to watch his opponent. Problem was, the action came to him and he was ready to fight. This basically meant John Cena cost Triple H his match with Hardy, but Hardy couldn't give a damn. He decided, I'm gonna go with a crossbody, and he stood on top. The following week, John Cena talked about iconic moments that are still talked about to this very day, and he claimed that he'll create one when he wins the title at Night of Champions. Triple H, though, stopped him there. He agreed with them that the match will be a moment, but at the same time, he struggled to not believe this was personal. The game warned Cena over last week and threatened him. The challenger, though, took great offense to this double standard, because Triple H was the one who got involved in this business earlier. And the champion said that he did a favor for Cena because he was going to fall anyways, because he's uncoordinated. So Cena mentioned WrestleMania 22. He shouted that nothing's changed, but Triple H showed him what's changed. Cena had enough. He had enough of hearing that Triple H is a measuring stick, and if anything, he's nothing until he beats him. Triple H believed that Cena was too scared to disappoint his fans, but then realized that most of his fans aren't going to be up past their bedtimes. Then he asked them to tell a kid to give him a phone bell to ease the pain. Out of everything that got him mad, this was the one thing that frustrated him. These two were seconds away from clashing. They were ready for a fight, but McMahon wanted to give away some money. Cena's issues with Triple H affected him once more, as after trying to save him from an attack, the game dropped him and they traded strikes. This situation worked well for Jericho and Lance Cade, who were eager to make an impact. It went from bad to worse for Cena as Triple H was drafted to SmackDown, and he was more upset than Triple H, but the game was desperate to tell him that the match is still on. So that's the build. It's easily the best thing since Cena returned. And plus, when Cena usually talks about how he's going to win, blah, 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 he praises his opponent and goes on some babyface speech. Here, he was petty with Triple H. He's like, oh, even though you have that title, you're irrelevant.
He was also constantly mentioning WrestleMania 22 as if it didn't happen 2 years earlier. Triple H, on the other hand, knew that that was in the past and things were different now, and it was also one of the most unpredictable matches of 2008. Edge on the other side retained his title. Surely they won't have Cena lose. The match itself was good, hell, maybe even great. I have a very soft spot for it because, for one, WWE rarely does good guy versus good guy main events, but when they do, for the most part, they deliver. This one was sublime, and one of the reasons why you don't hear about it is because it wasn't on the biggest stage. I mean, this match should have been on SummerSlam. It had all the qualities of a superb SummerSlam main event. I also believe they surpassed WrestleMania 22. For one, Triple H was in form. He had some nice matches in the past few months. Cena was way better than he was in 2006, so that helps. It was a well-done main event, and it was exactly what you would expect from Cena and Triple H. Intensity, action, and drama. Both men brought it. In the end, Triple H was victorious and took the title with him to SmackDown. For Cena, his horrid 2008 continued to be disappointing. The next night on Raw, John Cena admitted that he lost with pride. He claimed that the match proved that himself and Triple H are two of the best, and the match will go down in history. Then he mentioned CM Punk's cash-in and said that he wasn't happy with JBL bullying his way into winning a title. But then he realized that he, Cena, could challenge him. The choice was with CM Punk. After the fans cheered that potential match, Cena told JBL to take his ass back to New York. He preferred otherwise. JBL said that he was declaring martial law in WWE and claimed that his God-given destiny was to win the title tonight. But in order for that to happen, Cena's got to be out of the building. Oh, Alberto Del Rio. The man brought his own security, and with force, they kicked Cena out. Knowing that security was an issue, Cena called for crime time. JBL got distracted, and Punk retains the title. It went from bad to worse for JBL as John Cena opted to ruin his limousine. And this was for his protection, apparently. John Cena claimed that the vehicle wasn't gonna pass inspection, and so crime time were gonna fix this. JBL was losing it, and then Cena decided to spray "JBL is poopy." This was the month WWE went PG, that's why. Later that night, neither man won the right to challenge CM Punk for the World Championship. It was Batista. As for JBL, he was fuming. He wanted John Cena in a New York City parking lot brawl match. Cena saw this as a good opportunity, an opportunity to find out if careers will be cut short. Cena was sick of this fake American, and if anything, he wanted to take this great American and destroy him. Cena was poised to fight. He wasn't promising victory, but he guaranteed that there will be hell. He said that he will come with the rage of 1,000 pit bulls and will not stop until he remembers the name John Cena. And if it wasn't obvious, he accepted. After waiting for half an hour, I assume, crime time were brought out because John Cena wanted to challenge JBL to a tag team match. Okay, this was one hell of a promo. Weird how nobody talks about it. But then again, I say this for a bunch of things. John Cena showed so much emotion and intensity with this promo and sold you on the fact that he was going to fight. He was out to fight, not win the match. Unfortunately for him, though, his challenge almost led to disaster. After JBL ran to the back, Cena was on guard. He knew that Bradshaw was up to something, and he was right because JBL dropped him with a tire iron and decided to pull something straight out of SVR 2006. What? Because he was going to run John Cena over. Turns out Cena ran away, and thinking about this, it was ridiculous. JBL wanted to, I assume, do it for The Rock in a time when WWE is going PG. Plus, even if it was TV-14, why the hell would JBL run him over? Anyways, I kind of like the match from the Bash. It's not as good as previous parking lot brawls, but it has its own charm, I guess. Once again, JBL was out to kill Cena like it was nothing, and I don't know what the hell is up with these 2000 heels. They're too much. Cena left unscathed and was vengeful. He turned into Stone Cold for a minute, brought the action to the arena, and he had the match won, but he screwed up and JBL shockingly won it. Decent match. It's not like good, it's not great, it's not anything like that, but maybe you'll like it. This JBL feud was not the best. It's honestly forgettable. Take away the limousine thing and the Crime Time Association, you won't remember much from this feud. You know, it wasn't as good as 2005. 2005 established John Cena as a star. It showed that he was the man, all that, and it was all thanks to JBL. As for the other things, my favorite part of this run was obviously John Cena's feud with Triple H. I loved how Cena was being petty. It wasn't no goody two-shoe anymore. He was straight up, oh, you're irrelevant. You never beat me, yada, yada, yada. We don't see that often with John Cena. With the Randy Orton and Triple H thing, he was in the background a bit. He was losing a lot. He wasn't doing much. And plus, like, compared to every other John Cena video I make, he didn't have that much TV time. Obviously, he had a lot of TV time because he's John Cena. But when compared to other time periods, just wasn't that much. My favorite match from this video was clearly John Cena vs. Triple H at Night of Champions. That was one of the best matches of 2008, one of my favorites. They delivered it. It had that big fight feel. The atmosphere was nice. All of that. I loved